I'd like to call the meeting of the Appeals Committee to order on this fine April 23rd. And I guess I'll do the land acknowledgement first. We are meeting here on Treaty 1 land, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Innu, and the Dakota peoples. It is also the national homeland of the Red River Métis, and where we receive our water from Shoal Lake Band 40 in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Councillor Ross Eady, and I'll be your chairperson today. And with us, we have our Councillor Chambers from
St. Norbert, St. River.
We have Councillor Mays from St. Adel. Hello. And we have Councillor Rollins from Fort Rouge East Fort Garry. From our administration today, from the planning department, we have Ms. Andrea Ross, and we have Ms. Donna Kane. We also have legal services that are available to us today. And of most importance, we have our senior clerk with us today, Mr. Brendan Harris. And I'll start off. Councillor Mays, will you move the minutes of April 9th?
So moved.
Taken as read and confirmed.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed. Thank you. Mr. Harris, we're going to move into our first.
In accordance with the City of Winnipeg Charter and the Development Procedures Bylaw, the process the committee will follow is the appellant will be heard first, followed by those in support of the appeal. Next, those registered in opposition are heard, followed by those registered for information. Finally, the appellant may return to speak in rebuttal to comments made, however, no new information is permitted. Please note that when your name is called, it's your opportunity to speak, however, you are not obligated to do so. For a more in-depth overview of the public hearing process and other information pertaining to what happens before, during, and after a public hearing, please consult the City Clerk's Department website. Please note that all hearings are recorded and will be a part of the public record. Should you have any questions after the hearings have concluded, please contact the City Clerk's Department. Item 1 is an appeal against the decision of the Director of Planning, Property and Development to approve a variance for 379 Oak Street under file DAV 119512A/2025B. Members of the committee, please note communications were received in support of and in opposition to the appeal, which have been distributed to all members of the committee. All participants have been muted and will only be permitted to speak when called upon. Once you've been heard, you can either remain in the Zoom meeting or leave and continue to watch live via the city's YouTube channel. If any participants are currently watching the live meeting on YouTube, please mute your audio player now. I'll turn it over to the administration for a brief overview.
Good day, councillors and Mr. Clerk. The subject site is located on the west side of Oak Street, north of Grosvenor Avenue, in the mature neighborhood of North River Heights within the city center community. 379 Oak Street is an interior lot. It is 40 feet wide by 118 feet deep, and it's approximately 4,820 square feet in area. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a two-story, 2,163 square foot single-family dwelling with a double attached garage to the rear. Variances are required for the front yard setback, the building height of the attached garage, the principal dwelling, lot coverage, and a cantilever length. It is recommended that the appeal be rejected. This concludes my summary. However, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes,
Okay, customers.
I have a number of questions. I guess, just firstly, is there a secondary suite proposed for this
No.
residence? Okay. And this is clearly in the mature communities.
Correct.
And we've had in about May of last year, we enshrined some of the guidelines into bylaws. Where sequentially, in terms of timing, where does is this affected by the guidelines or the bylaws? What's the timing on that?
The design of the home was done before the recent PDO was adopted. So this would have been very much more compliant had this been applied for before the change last May. So that's why we see such a degree of variances for this lot. There was a similar house built across the street before the PDO went in, and this house is about the same size and scale of that building.
And yet I'm going to have to ask you about that because, I mean, first up, there was a long process to develop those infill guidelines, a lot of give and take from counselors and the community. We landed on 28-foot height limit. And that's the rule. That's, if somebody comes in, you're not able to make somebody come in less than that because that is their entitlement, 28 feet. But why then are we giving the applicant here 30 feet? Why have rules is usually the way this is expressed. So why approve a height of 30 feet? And that didn't change in the PDO. That was in the infill guidelines approved in June of 2021.
It's because the size of the existing homes in the block are similar in height to that one.
But that's not part of the infill guidelines, though.
No.
Okay. And why I mean, somebody did the math for us here, so I'll assume they did the math correctly and say that the front yard setback is 26% less than what is the 34 feet mandated by, is that based on the average setback of the other houses on the block?
Yes, that was based off the alignment.
So why allow 25 feet then instead of 34 feet? If the alignment, whether it's great or crazy, is 34 feet, why allow this person 25 feet?
The reason I supported that was the block itself was a bit set back further, but the neighboring overall neighborhood had very similar situations or instances where a house, they weren't all completely lined up exactly.
But we do take an average though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The lot coverage, the 42%, is that I can't remember, that's infill guidelines and then we put that into the bylaws or?
Put that into the mature community, and I did consult with the applicants over that lot coverage. They reduced it drastically. They had asked for quite a significant amount, larger than what I've supported.
But why support, I mean, why have these standards? I mean, if the standard is 42% after a lot of back and forth, now we'll approve 44. In the next hearing, this will be cited as a precedent for 44 when the person applies for 46. And was only 2% more than the precedent you've already set at 44. So I appreciate the appeals committee wildly and arbitrarily rules on each application as it comes forward in consistency whatsoever. But why, but we're often told, oh, there's a precedent for this because some random appeals committee approved it. So why give them 44% when the relatively recently adopted rules said 42%?
Some of the mature community bylaw regulations or PDO regulations are suited more to a 25-foot wide infill lot with all of those percentages of coverage and that following that. With this larger lot, it wasn't those, but the PDO doesn't take that into consideration. It's just a blanket for everyone.
Councillor Owens, did I hear you wanted to ask?
I think Councillor Mays wasn't finished and I didn't. Thank you though, Mr. Chair.
The height of the garage and the cantilever is just sort of unusual. I find that's, you don't come across that too often. So is that what can you give me the rationale on the cantilever being 12 feet instead of 10 feet?
The rule for the cantilever is 10 feet or 20 square feet interior because they weren't having more than 20 square feet interior. Yeah.
And the garage being, why do they need a 15-foot tall garage?
They've asked for a higher height to have taller walls for their structure. So a normal detached garage would have been 13 feet.
But that's kind of circular, like, of course they need up more height if they want higher walls, but
Yeah.
why do they, what is our rationale for agreeing to that?
It meets the similarity of other houses with additions. This'll, from the rear lane, it'll look like a garage because it'll have a garage door, but from the side and from the front, it will just appear to be an addition to the house.
And two final questions. So total size 40 wide by 100-ish deep. So,
Yeah, 118 deep.
okay, oh, so fairly deep. Okay.
Yep.
And rear lane is paved, lane is gravel.
Lane is paved,
Lane
yeah.
is paved, okay. I may have some more questions later, Mr. Chair, but thank you.
I just have one question.
Okay.
So the front yard setback. When I'm walking down the street in Oak. There are structures that stick out that I believe the zoning bylaw just. I mean, doesn't grandfather. You'd have to get a permit to build what was there in the 1900s. But as you're walking out, can you point to an example on Oak? It's an 8-foot setback. The point of the question is, the thrust of your responses in the document is an argument that you average out the heights. Where is that same principle applied to averaging out the green space, if you will, on the front yard setback? So if, I take into consideration some of the historic designations that we have in this end of town, some of that applies to the green space and the way it moves. So is there a place perhaps right across the street that's an 8-foot setback? Or what can you respond to that?
Yeah, there's some houses across the street, further down the block, that have a closer to this requested front yard setback. They are not at the 34 feet. So when we do an alignment, that's strictly for the 3 or 4 houses to the north and to the south or east or west of the lot in question. We don't often, especially in River Heights, the length of the block is quite long. So that was my reasoning, is when I look at, further down the block, I do see some properties that have, front covered porches that may be consistent with the house when it was constructed. And when those types of applications come in and we ask to replace those structures, we almost always grant them what they had before. So we wouldn't normally have asked someone that was replacing a front covered porch to push it back if that had been the existing condition since it was constructed.
And is that approximately 8-foot front yard setback?
Well, they're not going to have an 8-foot front yard setback. They'll have 25 feet instead of 34.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah,
Is that a 25-foot setback?
yes, they're proposing 25 feet.
Okay,
So there were other similar, I found 26, I found 28, I found 20. There was one that was really close, 23.
yeah, whether it's a porch or.
I can't distinguish that. It's the footprint of the house, the way it lays. So if the footprint from the eave or the wall gives a measurement, that's what I.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this variance is to accommodate a cantilever of 12 feet.
Mhm.
And then the height variance as well.
For the garage, yes, for the garage and the dwelling.
So the height difference is 2 feet.
Yes, for both.
All right,
There are 5 variances in total.
And 5 variances in total, yes.
Questions, I have one question. There is no call for variance, but the garage itself it's under 12%.
Because it's attached to the dwelling, it's taken into consideration with the 44% lot coverage that they're requesting. Because it's attached at the rear. And that's what they had originally asked for.
Good, yeah, okay, all right.
Mr. Chair,
Still
sorry.
would have been a better
Uh,
variance.
I mean, this essentially is a good example of what we'll be debating fairly soon with the fourplexes and if every rule also has a 10% discount to it, then you have to sort of set your own standards differently. But I get just how is this coming off the director on the front yards? That's more than 10%. I mean, this is a certain type of variance. Like, this wasn't heard at community committee or?
No,
or anything
no,
like
this was all as per the development procedure bylaws. These are all B-type variances.
You need to find a B type variance for them.
Usually residential and usually minor in nature.
I can give you the 44% instead of 42 being minor, but isn't the front yard thing, I'll defer to whoever did the math. I mean, 25 instead of 34, depending on which way you do it. I mean, you get a different percent if you go up from, 9 on 25 is 36%. So is it A that's a 10%?
A is 5%.
5%.
A 5%, yeah, tolerance.
So is there any definition of minor here, or is that completely in the eye of the beholder?
No, a B is just a B, whether it's at the beginning of the threshold or near the end of the threshold of what's permitted.
What's the threshold then? Or are you saying just the threat?
Just whatever the development procedure bylaw says. So if it says, a variance of, up to 25% is usually what it is under a B. So 25% of the allowable is considered to be. Anything more would end up a C.
And that would go to,
That would be potentially going to the community committee, depending if there were appeals.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good.
Okay.
Mr. Harris, you want to call up the first development?
All right, I will start calling forward the appellants. First up, we have Catherine Russell. Catherine, if you'd like to come forward, you'll have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation after you state your name. You can just come right up to the front there. Grab a seat, please.
You can adjust it.
I'm making it a little
Yeah.
shorter for me as I'm a shorter person. Good morning, council. My name is Catherine Russell. I was having some communications with Brendan yesterday to help me understand this. I'm getting used to learning more about the new property rules that are coming because of the build across the street from us and the new infill laws that'll be impacting our neighborhood also soon. So again, my name is Catherine Russell. I've lived in the River Heights neighborhood with my husband, who is here with me today. We bought our house 10 plus years ago, but I've lived in River Heights all my life. We've been slowly watching the character of our neighborhood change in the last few years with the infills. And while we're not opposed to new builds by any means, we do wonder sometimes why the character is kind of, we're losing the character and historical importance of our neighborhood. In the last 4 years, we've seen 7 builds around my house within a couple of blocks, and 3 of those are within a couple of houses of ours. And they do substantially impact the neighborhood, particularly with height and the volume of the property space. So I'm going to start reading a bit more here on my points. So my first point I'd like to talk about is the failure to demonstrate hardship. So my understanding is variances are typically granted when an applicant can prove a unique and unnecessary hardship is caused by strict zoning laws. This application doesn't seem to provide any explanation as to why the 5 variances are required and how they reduce the perceived hardship. We have talked about these being minor variances. We had some discussion earlier here, what is defined as a minor variance, and it just seems to be rather arbitrary. That may not be quite the right word, but there are no unique characteristics specific to this property lot that I'm aware of that would require these type of variances. It's similar in size and topography with all the other lots on this block of Oak Street. So in my mind, this application doesn't demonstrate that strict adherence to the current zoning rules would cause an unable and unnecessary burden on the property owner. In my opinion, I don't believe this meets on the appeal committee's agenda point C that this is required to relieve the injurious effect of the zoning bylaw on the applicant's property. My understanding for the cantilever based on floor plans that was sent to us by our neighbors, that's for an extra large bathroom. So I think this could be precedent setting. Approving so many variances might encourage others to request similar exceptions, leading to a gradual erosion of any zoning regulations. There are construction impacts that occur. There's lots of vibrations that often occur arising from the construction of such a large residence, and this could have the potential to cause structural damage to nearby homes. I spoke earlier that we've had 3 homes around us that have been built. We can contest to all the shaking that goes on when they come down, all the disturbance that occurs. We've seen houses, so we've spoken that there's other houses in the neighborhood of similar height. The only one I can think of a similar height is the new build that was built 2 houses down from us. It is a massive wall, and the person that now lives directly to the north of it now has absolutely no light and really no privacy, as there's windows that overlook it. It's like having a giant barn wall down your side of your property line. We also see it from our property now too. I actually know someone further down the block closer to Kingsway that says they can also see the roof line from their house. So I believe the quality of life will be impacted by this for similar reasons I've just spoken to. There's going to be shading that can occur, and there's going to be a lack of privacy that can occur. I do find it interesting that when the small yards that are contained with these houses are always built on the south side of the lot, so they make sure that they do have the sunshine themselves when building. And lastly, my last point is community character. The multiple zoning variances being requested would disrupt the existing aesthetic, historical, and cultural identity of the neighborhood. This would also be a loss of green space and trees and foliage with this build, with the River Heights neighborhood, which is what the River Heights neighborhood is known for. This piece of property on the bungalow that's there right now, there's 2 very large spruce trees that are over 100 years old. Those will have to go down, of course, because you can't build a house of this size with those trees there. I believe there's an attempt to possibly save an evergreen in the back. My understanding of looking at drawings and designs is limited, but it does look like there's protection being built around it. Again, that is nice to see, but whether it'll occur or not, I would be surprised. We've seen other new builds, like I've said earlier, around us where they've kept an elm tree. There's a large one on Elm Street, and that elm tree is now just a dead tree hanging over a large house. So in conclusion, I'd hope that the city can find it in their heart to look at my arguments, consider these when you're looking at the variances on this appeal. I believe this house will be very large and imposing. It doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. And I find it disappointing that people want to come into our community and build a house where they know other neighbors may not. Well, it's very disruptive for the other neighbors from a visual perspective, privacy, and everything else. So with that, I guess I'm done what I'm going to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just hang in there. I'm sure my colleagues have questions. Question?
I think my question is to the clerk or back to the staff still. I'm remain troubled by, I'm told B variances are 25% max. And that's just, there's no way of getting the math of I want 34 feet instead of 25 to come to that threshold. There isn't. I mean, I would take it as it's a 9-foot exemption from the 25, which is a 36%. I mean, you're not taking it from the base of the bigger number, just artificially lowers the percentage. So even then you're at a 26. So how is this in front of us? Why didn't this go to community committee? I mean, it's, if the threshold's 25%, or is minor just whatever the director says it is? So why then are we gonna have a whole fourplex hearing if there's no point in it? Because it's just any amendment will be deemed as minor and we'll be back and then there's no hearing at all because it's all as of right. So I guess Brendan, I'll lob that at you, and if that's not yours, I
would put that question to the department, just as they are the ones who would have approved this. I'm here to facilitate the appeals process.
That's fair.
Well, and then the timing.
We'll address that when we get to more questions.
Well, I have a question for the administration. The question is the threshold any percent the director wants? Not to take a shot at the director, but if the threshold's 25%, we're just way outside that. Like on any math.
It's also because the zoning designation, anything zoned R1 is almost everything, regardless of the degree, is considered a B-type variance because it's residential. So the development procedure bylaw says anything zoned, RR5, R2, R1, R2, RMU, and RMH can be heard as a B-type variance so long as it doesn't exceed the 25% threshold.
But this does exceed the 27% threshold. That's my whole point. Not the rest of it, not the height business or the lot coverage.
It's because it's a dimensional standard. So I can't answer that, then I can't tell you why. I was told it was a B-type variance for the entire file.
Fills me with optimism for the fourplex debate. I tell you, like, if we're setting rules, we're setting rules. If the rule then is, but the variances are whatever we say they are, and there's no, like, what wouldn't be, well, you've given me the best answer you can. That's fair enough.
Have a speculative.
Is it to the administration, Mr. Chair? Because I'm wondering if we could release our delegation. And our appellant is still with us. Typically, this is a time where we ask the appellant questions and the appellant can return to her husband in the gallery if we have no further questions
All right.
for her
Thank you,
specifically.
Councillor Rowlands. Do you have a question for our appellant?
I don't.
Councillor Chambers?
No, I'm good.
No. About Councillor Beams? No. I
No.
just have one question. So this is a 2,100 square foot home being proposed. I used to be able to see and spend time up and down Oak and around Kingsway, where a lot of the houses look like they're even bigger than 2,100 square feet. Is this the typical size of a house closer to Grosvenor?
No, the typical size of our house, they're generally bungalows, and I would say between 1,000 to 1,200 square feet. Where at the end of of Oak Street that we are on are typically smaller bungalow type houses.
As you get closer to Grosvenor.
Of course, that's my opinion as I'm seeing faces around me.
Councilor Rowlands might be making some faces. There's a diversity on the block, but it's yours to answer.
Thank you very much for my opinion.
That
Yeah.
was my question. Thank you. So we'll hear from others and the process is, you'll be able to come back and rebut and deal with anything you heard, but you won't be able to add any new information, okay?
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next appellant is Dennis Woodford. Dennis, if you'd like to come forward, you'll have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation after you state your name.
Morning, councillors and ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to appear before you today to appeal this order under consideration for the home that's to be rebuilt on 379 Oak Street. Now, my name is Dennis Woodford. I'm a practicing professional engineer. I live with my wife at 372 Oak Street and have done so for nearly 50 years, I think. From our front windows, we can see 379 Oak Street. We appreciate that the zoning bylaws are in place to maintain, among other things, the character of the neighborhood. What is most distressing to us is that a developer with an architectural wonder for a house can replace an existing house, and in doing so, contravenes these zoning bylaws. It almost seems that, has been discussed quite significantly here, and I do appreciate your previous discussions. It almost seems that a developer can apply to build their architectural wonder to exceed these bylaws. So far as your committee is concerned, their attitude would be, no worries attitude. And if that is the case, we can build a house anything we want. No worries, we can deal with that. Because these variants are so elastic. Now, these homes in this neighborhood are approaching 100 years old. But they're built solidly of Douglas fir. Now, that will last much longer than these modern homes with 2x4 pine. And as we walk around the neighborhood, we see these such old homes, and they've been refaced, redone on the outside. And some of them look absolutely magnificent when they've been redone. It's still the same house, just refaced. They do not, of course, adversely impact neighbors. I think the neighbors are pleased to see that because it helps make the neighborhood look better. They do not adversely impact neighbors like they would with an oversized house that is such as is intended for 379 Oak will do. Our appeal is brought to you under my name in writing, which you probably have before you. It concludes with an urgent request to deny all 5 variations to the zoning laws for 379 Oak Street. That is basically my presentation, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Sir, any questions, colleagues? No? I won't get into the architectural wonders. That's that old engineer versus the architect thing, I think. Is that right, sir?
Well, yes. Unfortunately, I've seen what this house looks like. It is not a blocked architectural wonders. We've got some of those houses in our district which are just blocks. They don't even have gable roofs, which is what this neighborhood's all about.
Thank you, sir. And you are a registered appellant, so we're going to have more people present, and we'll also hear from the applicant. You'll be able to come back. You won't be able to add any new information, but you come and speak to anything that you've heard during the hearing. Thank you so much, sir, for coming in.
Okay, so our next appellant is Andrea Neal, who will be joining us over Zoom. Andrea, I'm just going to ask you to unmute and turn your video on. You'll have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation after you state your name. Andrea, just asking you to unmute and start your video.
Hello,
We're done.
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Just give us.
Okay, I can't turn my video on at the moment because I'm driving.
Okay.
My daughter has a allergy appointment, so thank you for having the Zoom option. We live, my husband and I, and our twins, our 2-year-old twins, at 369 Oak Street, which is just 2 houses north of 379. I agree with everything my neighbors have said and fully support. I think they've spoke really eloquently about how our neighborhood doesn't want this variance to be approved. I just want to say, as a new parent and a parent that wants to raise her children in River Heights, I also find this variance upsetting because there's a lot of community currently in this neighborhood. Just being in the front yard and being able to see your neighbors playing outside and being able to see down the street to the park, and letting this house build 10 feet into the front yard is going to ruin that. And as they said, more houses are going to ask for this, and the community of the neighborhood is going to be completely ruined. And people aren't going to want to live in River Heights for the same reasons that they currently do. what else did I want to?
Ms. Neal?
Yes,
I'm the chairperson, Ross Eady. You have pulled over, right, to speak?
Thank you.
oh yeah, I have pulled over to speak.
Okay, all right, I was worried. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, but I was.
That's okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just talking to somebody on the phone. Yeah. Yeah, so in my email, my second email wasn't, that I sent to Brendan, didn't get included in the meeting minutes, I noticed. And that's where I outlined, how this variance didn't agree with the Winnipeg bylaws, being over 10 feet, into the front yard. And it's sorry, honey, it's not daddy. I'm just talking on a meeting for a second, honey. And sorry, I'll try and make this quick so that she doesn't keep interrupting. I lost my train of thought though. 10
You were
feet.
talking about your letter.
Thank you. It wasn't included. Thanks for jogging my memory.
Yes, I have 3 kids.
You understand. Yes. So this is also just a giant house for one person, or like a family. It doesn't provide any more homes or like spaces for other people, which I feel like is the point of these new like bylaws that Winnipeg has, so that there can be more people living in the center of the city. But this is just like a massive house, so you're not really adding any additional housing, and it's a massive house that's going to be very expensive. So it's just another big house for rich people, which I don't think solves any of our housing issues. So that's all I have to say. I appreciate the comments that the councillors have said before and how they didn't agree with this variance going to this level at this point. And yeah, I hope you guys listen to everything the neighbors have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Neal, for your presentation. I'm not sure if you want to.
She is an appellant.
I'm not sure if you're going to want to come back, but you have the opportunity. If you're listening, to come back and rebut anything that you heard. You just won't be able to add any new information.
Yeah, I'm actually going to sign off because I'll have to go into the doctor's office. But thank you very much.
Okay, take care and congratulations on your young family.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay,
We're
so
just done now.
at this time, we can move, that concludes those appellants who have registered to speak, so we can move to those in support of the appeal.
You sent me an email saying that I had been registered.
That is correct. You are in support of the appeal, but not an appellant.
So you have a right to come and speak for up to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, we will call you forward. So first in support of the appeal, we have John Orlico. And he's
Oh, there we are. Hello, everybody.
No.
Hello there from Point du Bois. Sorry I couldn't be there today. I do have something to deal with out here. But I did want to take this opportunity to speak to you today about this, why I'm supporting the appeal. Really well spoken by the presenters ahead of me today. And also some of the questions I heard from Councillor Mays square right on point. So some of the stuff I will be repeating, but I'll repeat it quickly. So first of all, as I said, I support the appeal. And the reasons why is that the variance has failed to meet city criteria for several reasons. The first one is it does create a substantial adverse effect on the amenities, use, safety, and convenience of adjoining properties, such as blocking sightlines for parents monitoring their children's safety while playing on the street, due to the projection of this house, which will be shooting out about 9-10 feet further than other houses. And I will take a stand on saying an open porch is nothing like a full build. Sure, some old porches may be sticking out, but those have sight lines, you can see through them. This is a massive build. It'll be quite big, and it will be jetting out. It will be very noticeable. I do have a couple of them that I've seen in the neighborhood. you notice them. They do jet out quite a bit. It's part of the aesthetic of neighborhoods is to have that uniform front yard setback, and we've been quite clear on it. I also am not too sure where this one came from, where you're looking at properties on the other side of the street to get your front yard setback. They're usually done from one side of the street. So I haven't really heard that before, where you're looking at, oh, well, there's nothing on this side, so let's look at the other side. Well, that again, that's a little unique, and I don't support that either. You have to look on the one side of the street. It's also incompatible with character. As I said, with aesthetics of the front yard setbacks, having this jet out, you're going to have a kind of a straight line and then a pop out. And that's a big problem. And as we heard today already, this will be precedent setting. Once you have one building that pops out like this, it's used by administration in the future, say, well, there are other houses already have that as well. So again, I don't support that. So that's for that one. And again, so it's really for me, it gets down to these variances that are being requested. There's no reason why they need these variances, except they want to build something bigger than normally would be allowed. That's not a reason for a variance. The variances are required because of some uniqueness and undue hardship of the property itself. This doesn't have that. This is very similar property than most properties in the neighborhood. And it also doesn't really, sometimes do variances to, for example, add housing and increase supply and hopefully affordability. We do those variances because they're part of city policies. We don't have a city policy that says build as big as you want and it doesn't matter what the rest of the neighborhood looks like. That's not a city policy. So I don't see the reason why, and I'll be working hard, these variances shouldn't even be allowed. I'm not sure why we're wasting so much time on these variances. They should actually follow the rules. If we're going to be handing over the control and processes to the administration, we can't be allowing people to come by and say, well, I know the rules, but I don't like many of them because I want to build something bigger just because I want to. We have to have some kind of rules are rules. So again, I'm not sure why, I guess everybody's option to put forward requests for variances. But again, the administration should be looking at, do they really need it or do they just really want it? And in this case, it sounds like the developer wants it. But the neighborhood is out today saying, well, that's nice, but it doesn't work for us. Councillor Mays did bring up the point today, which again, I'll be looking at a little bit closer. The front yard setback is more than 25 feet, 25%. So I concur with Councillor Mays. Even the front yard setback, it shouldn't be here. That should have gone through committee. It's too far out. It has a dramatic impact. So for those reasons and in support of the neighborhood I love, we got to have some areas, and especially when we're doing all this as of right housing, as of right housing, but you can also change all the variances after. That's a double hit. So I think we have to be very careful when we look at offering the option to have variances. They have to have a proven need, not a want. So in this case, I don't see the need. They can build, absolutely. We're looking forward to a new build. We do have some old housing stock, but do it within the rules that we have already. Don't ask for these quite large changes. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting the appeal.
His colleagues? No questions. Thank you, John. You made your points very clear, and well, I guess we'll catch you down another day.
This afternoon. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Also in support of the appeal, we have William Thompson. If you'd like to come forward, you'll have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation after you state your name.
Thank you. I apologize for interrupting earlier. Hello, committee members. My name is William Stewart Thompson, and I've lived in River Heights for 10 plus years. I've read through appendix.
Just a bit more.
You need me to speak up?
Yeah. Just a bit more.
Okay. I've read through Appendix A, which is the report prepared by D. Harris, Chief Zoning Officer, and wish to speak against some of the statements made. Under the heading of Proposed Development, the second point states, the proposed dwelling is not out of character or scale with any of the existing dwellings in the neighborhood. I believe this to be untrue. In a neighborhood of single-story bungalows and two-story homes averaging 20 to 25 feet in height, the height and square footage of this home far exceeds the scale of existing homes. At a total height of almost 35 feet to the peak, it will tower over adjacent properties, reducing light and eliminating privacy. Under the heading of neighborhood context, the second point states, and I paraphrase, dwelling built in 1921 that has fallen into disrepair and will be demolished. This home was inhabited at this time last year, and in the years previous even had upgraded windows installed. I believe the state of disrepair it has fallen into is due to the home being left vacant and unkept this past year. It is my belief that the foundation issues of this home were repairable, albeit at a cost, but would have been preferable to maintain the aesthetic of the neighborhood. Under the heading of development analysis and issues, the first point states, there is sufficient separation between the location of the proposed dwelling and the adjoining properties to minimize any impacts from the proposed variances. I'm curious what criteria is used to support this statement. Looking at the site plan, there appears to be very little distance between the home and the property line, raising a question of how issues such as rainwater drainage and snow removal will be dealt with. The reduced yard size will certainly cause adverse effects on the adjoining properties. The second point states, the lot in question and the adjoining lots both have mature trees, shrubs, and fencing to reduce the impacts from the proposed variances. In actuality, the proposed build will require the removal of most trees and shrubs on the property, calling into question how any remaining trees or shrubs on the adjacent properties have any effect to reduce impacts. The third point states, and I paraphrase, the plan reflects similar house designs in the area. I feel this is also untrue, as the house designs in the area are of smaller craftsman-styled homes. To close, I ask this committee to grant this appeal because of the following. It is not consistent with Plan Winnipeg and any applicable secondary plan as outlined by Mr. Isaac DeLuna in the letter entered as Exhibit 9. It does create a substantial adverse effect to the use, safety, and convenience of adjoining properties. While it may be a minimum modification of a zoning bylaw, there was no existing injurious effect to necessitate the variance, and it is not comparable with the area in which it is being proposed. Thank you.
Sure. Any questions, Colin?
I had a question. Might not be a fair question. What is the height of the two adjacent properties? Are they bungalows? Are they two? They look sort of two-story. I mean, photos can be pretty small on our screens, so.
Yeah, I don't know the exact heights of those two particular homes. I know the one to the north is a two-story. Off the top of my head, I can't think of whether the one to the south is one or two stories.
Okay. I'll fall back up with the minimum. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, sir. Thanks for coming out and presenting your perspective on this development. You're not an appellant, so there's no ability to come back.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes those who had pre-registered to speak in support of the appeal. Just looking to the gallery, is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of the appeal? Seeing none. In support of the appeal? Okay, I will just need you to fill out one of the registration forms.
Morning. Good morning.
My name is Isaac Dalona. I'm a property owner of one of the houses on Oak, on 363 Oak. So I'm very close to the new development. And I'm a mechanical engineer, and it's an honor to be here and also to be share this meeting with Mr. Dennis Woodward. He's a hydro legend.
Oh,
He's a world-renowned electrical engineer, so
okay.
I am very delightful to be here and also hear what he had to say. All I want to say is, as a mechanical engineer, we set standards and rules to follow. And clearly, in this case, we're trying not to follow them. So I'm not gonna rephrase what is being said, but every single variance, it actually deviates enormously. It's not even 1% or 2%. We're talking, an unprecedented change. And the idea or the suggestion that because there's new developments or other development have been completed, and take that as a precedence, that doesn't make any sense. We as an engineer, we don't use, this was designed like this, so we're just gonna copy and make it. No, we just follow, we go back to the standard. And I appreciate the time you give me to come up here. I already submitted my letter, so I'm not gonna rephrase that. But it will be very shameful to see the development being built the way it's being proposed. That's it for me.
You know you're an appellant. Sir,
Sorry?
you had filed it as one of the appellants. You do have an ability to come back and,
Okay.
Okay, so then, what happened there?
just relate to. I don't know.
You'll be asked to.
My letter is very clear.
I'm just saying,
And
Come back.
you registered as one of the appellants. There's several appellants on this.
Okay.
And once I check, see, you are one of the appellants. So if you hear anything else, you are able to come back.
Okay. So,
Um,
can I be removed from being one of the film?
well, if you don't have time, then don't worry about it.
No legal round.
Perfect.
There's nothing here.
Go on. All right, thank you for your presentation, sir. David.
Okay, so I'll just look to the gallery again. Is there anyone else in support of this appeal? Seeing none, I have not had anyone register to speak in opposition to the appeal. Just looking to the gallery, is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the appeal? Seeing none, is there anyone here to speak for information on the appeal? Seeing none,
Get that clear.
Back to the administration.
so at this time, yes, questions for the administration.
Is the applicant not here?
The applicant has not registered to speak and did not rise.
Who would like to go
The
first?
applicant isn't speaking today?
Benny,
That appears to be the case.
colleagues, any, more questions for the administration?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Councilor Rollins.
Councilor Owens indicates she is gathering herself, so I'll
Okay.
go ahead.
All right, Councilor Nixon.
Procedurally, and this may be for the clerks not to admin, sorry, but I think it's for the admin. I mean, are we able to refer? A couple of these, I'm okay with, a couple of them I'm not, quite frankly. Are we able to refer some of them to the community committee? The front yard one, frankly, I think should be referred, because I just don't think there's no, it's way more, it's more than 25%. So if the threshold is anything, then we've really undermined. But Brendan, is that for you?
I can answer this question. No, we wouldn't be able to refer this to community committee. The hearing today isn't about the application, it's about the appeal. And this is the hearing body for variance and conditional use appeals.
So that's not his question, if I may, Counselor Mays. His question is on a single issue. Can we refer it? Not because we're under the mistaken impression that we are the hearing body, but because of sending it back and in effect saying the community committee needs to decide on that one point. There's another way of looking at his question, and I'm going to choose because I had a similar.
So at this time, these variances have been approved.
We know that.
So we would probably need to consult if we were going to remove this application from a B and change it to a D to go to community committee.
Yeah, it would have to start at the process entirely again. We would post again.
Colleagues, I don't think we should entertain that concept. I think we've heard a number of things, and there is, one troubling variance out of several, right? We're hearing all the variances in one, not separate each one, right? It's all part of a variance fee, whatever it is. My recommendation is we proceed to make a decision on this.
Okay, but I mean,
This
you're,
is-
you're welcome to
I'm
make
just
that
saying,
recommendation,
Mr.
obviously,
Chairman,
but
I'm recommending that.
Yes. I mean, my question was unusual to try and refer it out. I get that, but obviously we could approve all five. We could approve none. We could approve four. We could approve three. We could approve, this isn't a package deal.
Yeah,
That said, I don't think that's probably the correct answer. You can't refer it into a
can't
whole
refer, but
different
you can
realm.
approve in part
That's
if you
fair.
decide you
I-
don't like some of them.
Would be, well, I'll be following up to say what is so on this criterion then, the recommendation is that you can build a fourplex on a 50-foot wide yard that has a paved back lane. And this would be within 800 meters, so 39 feet up. But it's only 40 wide, but that's only a 25% variance, so the director can hear that and say, fine, so then suddenly we're 25% off what we just approved. But you better win at appeals, because a tie doesn't get you there, so you gotta win 3-1 at appeals. I mean, I'm really troubled by, there's a variance procedure running completely parallel or beneath the bylaw procedure, and God help you, but you can't just get a tie at appeals. You got to win 3-1 to succeed in actually enforcing the rules. So even if you're 1% off, if you're sick, we get these ones all the time, right? There's this like curvature in the yard, so it's 24 feet to the deck or some trivia. But this is not. There's no weird parallelogram shaped yard. Like this is just I want a bigger property. Or I want a bigger house. Okay, so I mean, in a way, this is actually quite a bit smaller than what they could probably get in what's coming with the 3-plexes and the 4-plexes, but that's for that's for June's debate, I guess. I'm troubled by the 44%. I can see we'll give them a little more height because we're squishing them a little more, or the converse, we're coming down a bit on height, so let them fan out a little more. I get all that, but we're giving them a little bit of height, and he's like, can you go over, and you're very well prepared, I have to say, is admirable preparation. Why the idea that 42% is really just for 25-foot lots? It doesn't say that anywhere. Like, that's not in the infill guidelines. The infill guidelines were enormous effort to hammer out at 42. We'll probably abandon all that. We are about to abandon all that in the 4-plex debate, but here we are today. So can you give me your pitch again as to why the 44% you're supportive of that?
Because if they had done a detached garage, it would have been compliant. And also, I didn't mention it earlier, but the existing front yard for this property is somewhere between 27 and 28 feet. So by them asking for the 25, I didn't feel like it was such a large request, since the existing dwelling, if we had done what the neighborhood wanted and just fixed this house, it would remain at the 27 or 28 foot mark.
Yeah.
But with that 27, in terms of its existing, it's a front porch or veranda?
It's one of those common situations where there is some type of front porch where you enter through the side. You don't enter directly from the front street. So it's to accommodate an entrance area.
So it's not as, you can't see through, it's not as.
Can't see through it. It's covered in stucco. It does have windows on the front, but it is considered a full addition or a full portion of the dwelling.
I think there's, you got a question, Councilor Lawson?
Good, go ahead.
But Councillor Mays was continuing, I think.
And just, thank you for that on the front yard. The height, is this, I mean, there's always this debate of you measure from the midpoint of the angular
Mid-peak of
plane
the-
and all that
Yep.
stuff. But why are we comfortable with, I'm a little uncomfortable giving the bigger lot coverage and the higher height. So the height, what's the explanation for the height here?
My-
Is it that he's, and if it's that he's parallel with his neighbor, I should have asked this right at the start. How high, how tall are the neighboring
The
structures?
two neighboring structures are 2 stories in height. And again, although I referenced it earlier, there was a house across the street that was built at 388 Oak, almost this exact same design and same height and everything, and not a single variance was needed before the mature communities or PDO came into play. So I was trying to be somewhat sympathetic to the fact that they had designed this home at a time when they were trying to adhere to the rules and had done so across the street, and they assumed that they could build a very similar sized home across the street on the same size lot and get the same results. And instead of getting a permit without any variances needed, they ended up needing all of these variances. Talk more about the PDO or
What
the,
happened in the intervening years in policy? I think that is an important answer.
so a lot of the infill guidelines were meant to address a 50-foot lot being split into 2 and you having a 25-foot lot. That is not it's the dominant subdivision and infill that we see in the city. There are one-offs like this, obviously, where we have an existing dwelling that needs to come down and we're going to replace it. So my thoughts were the fact that the house across the street was able to proceed, no yard variances. This one also has no yard variances, so there should be no drainage issues. There should be no, they weren't asking for side yard setback requests. And I felt that the height was a minor, 2 feet I felt was somewhat minor considering. But those infill guidelines were based mostly on a 25-foot wide lot, 100-foot deep, and how to prevent overbuilding on those. So those same rules, when you apply them to a larger lot, they do become somewhat injurious depending on your design and your proposal. I'm not saying they couldn't have had a proposing house. Most definitely they could have designed something that would have been completely compliant.
If it was a detached double garage, what would be the total lot coverage of all buildings on that lot?
It would have been up to 52,
52%.
which is what they originally had asked for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If, just out of curiosity, if the front yard variance, which is substantial, I'm agreeing with my colleagues, but if they move the building back, does that have any effect on any other fees or anything on this particular lot? And in attached garage, I guess it would just be a shorter rear driveway into it.
Yeah, let's just bring up their site plan. So they are proposing to replace the landscaping in the front yard that they will be removing. They are putting, there's 2 trees in the front yard and 6 shrubs. The attached garage will give them a 11-foot rear yard for them to drive into.
Right now.
No, right now they
Well,
have,
if they moved it back, okay.
if they moved it back, they have room because there's 11 feet and they can go up to 5. So they've got about 6 feet of space to play with.
Okay.
And I,
More questions? Go ahead.
this was raised by one of the speakers, and just for clarity here, it's a single family home replacing an existing single family home. There's no argument here of we need more housing and we're in a housing crisis, therefore we need to quadruple, triple, double. Like this is a 1-for-1 replacement, right?
Yeah, the developer wanted to obviously take advantage of the biggest house that they could build in this beautiful neighborhood, obviously. And there are similar large houses that have, there is $1 million house next or across the back lane, I believe, on Ash. So this isn't going to be so far out of context for affordability, and that would translate to a size. That was a 2,300 square foot house. So if this is a 2,100 square foot house, it will match some of the houses in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you for that.
Just going back to your question, Councilor Mays' question and your answer with respect to the march of time that predates the infill guidelines. That within other cities' zoning bylaws, they have a greater policy discussion on the tests, whereas we remain really a close fidelity with the charter that I don't find has the same utility as other cities. And I lean on Toronto that has a 4-point test, right? And their test is, so whereas we have to contemplate the injurious effects, right? Toronto's is a more plain language. Is it minor? I'm just leading to a question, if you don't mind, to the public
I
administration.
don't see the relevancy of Toronto here, please.
No, sorry, Mr. Chair, I challenge the
I
chair.
don't see the
I'm
relevancy of
asking a
Toronto
question.
versus what we have as a zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Well, I haven't even been able to get out the relevancy is this, if I make it out the question, then with respect, you can decide, Mr. Chair. But
It's the relevancy of Toronto.
I haven't even gotten, here it is, the relevancy of Toronto, if I may, and if I can't speak, decisions to make, Mr.
Well, I
Chair.
can speak, Councilor Rollins, but you know what? Toronto has nothing to do with Winnipeg. Thank you.
So as I was saying, they asked the question, is it minor? So instead of the injurious effect, they asked the question, does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? And is it desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure? So I was hoping you could answer those 4 questions in light of this, because I think it is more it has more utility than determining injurious effect. Dylan Harris in his report repeats that he finds that there is no injurious effect. But could you answer, is it minor again? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? And is it desirable for the appropriate development, use of the land, building, or structure? And Mr. Chair, that is my question vis-a-vis Toronto. I hope it pleases you.
Anyway, they approved it, so I think they've answered the question.
So the first question was, is it minor? And I felt that it was minor based on the existing location of the dwelling. Asking for a few feet is minor. The couple of feet I felt was minor.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm finding this really disrespectful. You've allowed the question, and now you're repeating that was answered before.
It was.
Disrupting the hearing.
Again, a lot coverage of a 2% increase. All of these I felt were minor because the request, although the front yard is worded to seem like it's a very large ask, in reality, I felt it wasn't. You were only asking for 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet off of what was the existing setback of the existing dwelling. And could you repeat the next question? Sorry.
The general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. So in there, you did answer that there had been a march of time that you considered the previous mature communities versus the infill guideline that you didn't feel was appropriate in this context.
Correct.
You considered that there had been no variance applied for before across the street. But reflecting on the zoning bylaw before us, is that fundamentally different? Because those are no longer in essence before us unless you're also saying they're insufficient for purpose in River Heights.
I do feel that some of them are insufficient, and not just for River Heights, for any large, more than 40 or more foot wide lot that is going to be infilled. You could go, there are certain, the non-mature, the recent communities of Winnipeg don't have those rules. This house would have been compliant in a recent community on a 40 by 118 foot lot. It would have been completely compliant, and there would have been no variances needed.
The next question is, does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan?
I believe it is consistent with our Winnipeg and all other.
But not mature communities?
Because I feel that those variances are minor, I do feel that it is somewhat consistent with the mature communities.
All right. Questions all answered. I think there's no more specific regarding this particular lot, so
One more,
I'm willing to hear the assailants come back.
one more
Do you
public
have something
question.
specific
Yes.
to build?
Yes, number 4 question from Toronto, as I had outlined. Is it desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, building, or structure? Within our zoning bylaw, there are 2 references to heritage, and the applicants, some of them, that was a concern. Now, this is not a heritage zone, like Armstrong Point, for instance, or Peter Park. But there is one statement that does guide us in the zoning bylaw with respect to heritage. Reflecting on that final question, was there a reflection here on heritage?
And by heritage, do you mean the look of the house?
Yes, and that's the reference in the zoning bylaw about like sensitivity.
Yeah, the elevation plans that were provided are not blocky. It's not a bunch of blocks. It's very much a gable roof with, similar gable roofs in the neighborhood. Has a brick front facade, has a nice little covered front door, which is consistent with a lot of the homes, the character of the homes in River Heights. And to be honest, it also would fit, I think, like Fort Rouge. I grew up in Fort Rouge and I live in the River Heights now, and these are all somewhat similar houses. You go, towards Pembina, they all start to look the same in Crescentwood. So they did try to accommodate the aesthetics of the home to match the character of the neighborhood.
Okay. You want to hear now from
The appellants?
first appellant?
Okay, so now's the opportunity for the appellants to speak in rebuttal to comments made. First, I will call up Catherine Russell. Catherine, you'll have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. Just note, no new information is permitted.
Well, good morning again, Council. I'm happy to see so much discussion on this topic. Thank you very much. I have a question here. The new build that we've been referencing, the one that was built across the street, that was built before they wouldn't have required variances. So the new build was built in accordance with the allowed bylaws. What height was the bylaw at the time?
I believe it was 35. I just want to double check.
When was it built, I guess?
It was built in 2022, I believe, that house. I watched it get built one summer, last fall. But I mean, irregardless of the fact that that house was built before there were variances, the community around here has concern in regards to the house that was built. If we could have had a say in that regard, you would have heard the same concerns today under that. The height, the lot size, you say there's no drainage issues, but I live beside it and we see the sump coming out into the back lane, I did want to address the fact of, we seem to have wandered a little bit into the infill and the 3s and 4s. My understanding, just attending the meeting, is that we would not be considered within the 800 meters of a transit zone. That was my one
Thank you.
comment there. So, I'm not sure I had anything else quite yet to say, but I do find it odd that there's a number of people that are living within where this house will be built with concerns, yet the person that wants to build it, the developer, didn't even show today to say why it should be built. It seems like more of the defense is coming from the actual city itself that it should be built to such a large size. Again, I'd like to restate the argument that this lot doesn't prove as an awkward shape requiring a lot of variances. I think a very large house can still be built to accommodate whoever may live in it in the current guidelines. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, up next, we will call up Dennis Woodford. He'll have 10 minutes to speak in rebuttal to comments made. However, no new information is permitted.
Now, I have no additional information. Thank you very much for all of that.
Thank you, sir.
Just for the record, I will state that Andrea Neal is no longer in the Zoom meeting. So our next appellant to speak in rebuttal is Isaac DeLuna.
No more.
Okay. With that, we can now move on to motions.
Right.
Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Well,
I'm prepared to move some, I wonder what I'd like to do, and I think I'm in order doing it, is move them one by one, because with a package
I
of,
think you should move it in part, uphold the appeal in part
yeah,
on the front yard setback,
well,
which is that's the one that we're concerned with.
well, I'm concerned with a couple of them, but
Oh, well, then,
maybe frankly, I'm prepared to move them. I didn't hear a lot of concern about 4 and 5, so I'm happy to support those. But I mean, you can come up with an almost infinite number of variations here where, I move 1 and 2 and, so I think it shouldn't take us that long. So unless I'm ruled out of order, I'll start moving. I'd like to try and move them one by one and see, well, let's start at least with the one that does seem to be controversial, which is the front yard, and then we'll maybe inch forward from there.
Council meetings, I've seen this done in part many times. I don't know why you wouldn't uphold the appeal in part and designate the 1 or 2
But because
1 or 2 that you believe the appellants have proven the case, right?
Because if I move in part to allow the appeal on 1 and 2, and Chambers says, no, I actually agree with you at 1, but not 2, so I'm gonna vote against you there. Have we already dealt with number 2 and number 1 then? Or can he then bring a motion saying, okay, I'd give him 2, but not 1. I give him only 1, but we could be here all day. I mean,
Councilor Mees, the specific one that we believe is not a SB or whatever. If you're concerned about the lot coverage, pre-zoning bylaw, 52% coverage of the lot, right?
I'm not concerned about that.
We're not.
I'm concerned about 1 and 2. Okay, I'll move and then all hell will break loose, or
I think
we'll
we're
see.
gonna get some support.
All right.
From Mees.
I'll move that the report, I think I will on number 1. I'm not too confident about the others. That's why I was hoping to break it out, but let's see how we land here. I'll move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed, that's carried.
I'll move that the receipt of public representations be concluded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed, that is carried.
I'll move that in accordance with subsection 2473 of the City of Winnipeg Charter, and here, Brendan, I will need your assistance, that the variances are,
So just for a point of clarity, this would be the variance as amended, as I believe you're going to be putting some amendments forth. If you were to state that the variances were not consistent, you could not deny the appeal. Because you would be stating that they are in contravention to the bylaw or to the charter. So it would be, assuming what you are going to do is going to be allowing the appeal with amendments, it would be is consistent, does not create, is and is. So supporting reasons, and then the following motion would be that the appeals be allowed, the decision of the Director of Planning, Property and Development be concurred in with the following amendments.
Fine.
And that's straight.
Okay, so I'll give my supporting reasons then, shall I?
Well, first you gotta read
I'll move that in accordance with section 2473 of the City of Winnipeg Charter, the variance is consistent with Plan Winnipeg and any applicable secondary plan. Does not create a substantial adverse effect on the amenities, use, safety, and convenience of the adjoining property and adjacent area, including an area separated from the property by a street or waterway. C is the minimum modification of a zoning bylaw required to relieve the injurious effect of the zoning bylaw on the applicant's property. And D is compatible with the area in which the property to be affected is situated. Supporting reasons, well, I think that's the case on some of the 5 items here, but not on all 5. So I have no issues with the cantilever. I have no issues with the garage height. No one covered that. I can see the lot coverage because it's a detached garage, it's an attached garage, not a detached garage. But the other two, I'm troubled by the front yard. That is a big percentage. Whether or not you think it's a good idea or not, this shouldn't be in front of us. This is too big a percentage. This should have gone to community committee, I would say. This is too big a percentage variation to breezily dismiss as or categorize as minor. I appreciate the very well prepared presentation by the planner saying, well, think of what the existing building looks like, but still, it's a bigger variation than minor. And the height, I spent a lot of time on the infill guidelines and voted for them with some misgiving, but part of the deal there was that the height would be lowered from 35 feet to 28 feet inside the mature communities. Completely valid point by the planners. If they said a few blocks away and the recent communities 35 feet, everybody goes home, no hearing at all. And I don't necessarily want to kill this whole development because, to quote somebody in my ward, build baby build on this single family thing because I don't want a fourplex going in behind me. So let's go when can we get that foundation in the ground? So to some extent, this is smaller than what likely would be approved a few months from now, but we can't be sure of that. So those are my supporting reasons for moving ahead on 3, 4, 5 and not 1, 2, or granting appeal on 1, 2, not 3, 4, 5.
Councilor Williams, did you?
So I think that it's a good motion provided by Councillor Mays. It goes further than I would have. I probably would not have it amended because of, I probably would have only stuck to the front yard because of reasons that have been explained on the record. There is some heritage pieces that we can point to in policy, and the sensitivity that the planner explained on the record did lean on that heritage piece that exists, and that 27, 28 feet of what I might call the sunroom, or she called the entrance. And taken together, it still moves ahead. What does trouble me, that I do want to say on the record, which was why it's a good motion provided by Councillor Mays, but what does trouble me is what troubled me back in the infill guidelines that I didn't support, because I said on the record that it didn't work for my ward, and I didn't believe it worked for Council Orliko's or those heritage wards where the lots were larger. And I think that it is an important reflection on policy and the trajectory. I passed a lot of it as chair of property and development this term. I'm still not really happy with it. but taken together, it is a good compromise. It does bother me though that years before, this house could have been built sans variances. And so insofar as we do contemplate in the charter, opposite the applicant's property, I feel somewhat torn, but I'll be supportive of the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, so, I'm looking online, Google Maps to see, the house at 379 Oak and what I guess 2 feet represents in terms of the front, setback. I see here that the house itself has a veranda or a front porch that's patio stones, which where the downspouts come out and there's a garden there, looks to be about 2 feet. So that's where the building will actually come out to. I don't know if that's like the front of the house and then there will be a porch added, because it does seem that there is some room in terms of if the house is built out to that specification, that those 2 trees in the front could be saved potentially. Again, don't know about the root system or anything like that, but I don't see it as a big overreach if that's where it's going to be built to. But it would represent as a bit of a monolith when you look at the rest of the houses in context. So that I am concerned with that. But the height, the additional 2 feet, and then building out to where I suspect it will be built out to, I don't find it that much of an issue, but potentially it could be a bit of a monolith in terms of it, its built form. Yeah, so that's all I have for the public record.
Okay. Before I call the question, I will make a comment. I'm in support of Councillor May's motion. I wasn't overly concerned about the height. I'm going to make this point. We heard that there's $1 million house right behind us. This is River Heights. I see no reason why the architect, as Mr. we mentioned, that because of the value, I don't see a problem for the architect to work out how to find the 2 feet, nor to find the room to move the buildings back towards the back lane. Yes, they'll be losing the 11-foot driveway to the garage is also a place to park a car. They'll lose that, but I don't see the problem with adjustments being made to this home, given that it probably will sell for $1 million once complete. And so for those reasons, I'll be supporting Councillor May's motion. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
And I'm in favor. Anybody opposed? That's some changes.
No.
You're in support?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Councillor May,
Okay.
the amendment.
Brendan, looking to you here. I'll move that the appeal be allowed in part and the decision of the Director of Planning, Property and Development be
Concurred in with amendments, and just to be clear, we want to remove numbers 1, the front yard, 2, the height, and are we removing the lot coverage as well?
no.
Okay,
That's
so just removing the front yard of 25 feet and the height of 30 feet.
okay. You're clear on that? We're all good. So moved.
Okay. I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nobody's opposed. That is carried.
I'll move the variance order DAV 1195-12/2025B
Wow, you concurred.
Cancelled.
be canceled.
Correct.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed. That is carried.
And I'll move that the public hearing with respect to these appeals be concluded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed, that is carried.
Please note that the committee has made a final decision on this matter, which is not subject to further appeal.
All right, we are going to take a 10-minute break, colleagues.
Mr. Chair, before you do, I'm recusing myself from the next hearing on clerk's advice due to a reasonable apprehension of bias, so I will take my leave now.
Were you part of the hearing?
I was part of the hearing, and while there's nothing formally requiring me to recuse myself, I'm in discussion with clerks and others on the advice on the reasonable apprehension of bias, because I think it could be said that everyone here actually voted on it at council.
Thank you, Councilor Rowlands, and thanks for your service today, even though we had a little. Still don't see
I'll be
the
talking-
City of Toronto, but.
I'll be talking about that you after the hearing.
Thank you. Okay, we'll be back in 10 minutes. I'd like to call the appeal committee back to order, and we're on our second appeal, Mr. Harris.
Item 2 is an appeal against the decision of the Director of Planning, Property and Development to approve a variance for 915 McMillan Avenue under file DAV 271-912A/2024C. Members of the committee, please note communications were received in support of and in opposition to the appeal, which have been distributed to all members of the committee. All participants have been muted and will only be permitted to speak when called upon. Once you've been heard, you can either remain in the Zoom meeting or leave and continue to watch live via the city's YouTube channel. If any participants are currently watching the live meeting on YouTube, please mute your audio player now. I'll turn it over to the administration for a brief overview.
Good morning, committee. The subject property is located on the northeast corner of McMillan Avenue and Stafford Street in the McMillan neighborhood of the Fort Rouge East Fort Garry ward. Subject property is approximately 12,000 square feet and is currently vacant. On February 24th of 2025, City Center Community Committee rejected a zoning agreement amendment to allow the development to substantially differ in design from the plans that were approved in 2021. That decision was overturned by SBC and Council, meaning that the new design could now be approved. As with the 2021 design, the new design requires some variances. The new variances were approved by the director with the condition that they only come into force and effect if the zoning agreement is amended, allowing for a different design. As mentioned, council approved the amendment, so that is no longer a barrier. However, the city received appeals on the variance, which brings us to today's meeting. The proposal is for a 4-story building with 30 residential units on upper floors and 2 commercial units on the ground floor. The development will contain 15 parking stalls, 10 indoor and 5 off the lane, and 10 indoor secure bike parking stalls. The building will contain a mix of substantial facade materials, including brick and cement siding, and will include balconies. The proposed development requires variances for yards, density, and parking. The architectural team and the division engaged on design prior to application. The division supported the design but requested that the Juliet balconies with a depth of approximately 2 feet be deepened to provide functional space for use and seating. This change was made. The division also recommended new neighborhood consultation take place since the plans were different from 2021. This was done by the applicant. The proposed development is a low-rise apartment building, 4 stories in height, which meets complete communities policies for the site. 4 stories is also supported by the Corridon plan. The proposed development includes a density of 400 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit, which is greater than medium. Densities greater than medium are supported by the Corridon Osborne plan through the rezoning process, which was undertaken in this case and approved in 2021. The proposed development is consistent with all applicable regulations of the PDO, Corridon PDO. The remaining variances for yards, density, and parking are supported by the division because they enable the development of a mixed-use residential commercial building in a location where such development is supported under both complete communities and the Corridon plan and in a way that's consistent with policies, regulations, and design guidelines of the Cordon Plan and the PDO. Clerk and committee, the public service would like to recommend adding one approval condition if committee and the applicant agree. In order to, it's mentioned, this issue is mentioned in the report, but it was not added as a condition as intended. In order to move sight lines at the rear of the property close to the sidewalk, the public service recommends a condition of approval worded as that no opaque fencing or coniferous trees shall be located in the rear yard within 30 feet of Stafford Street.
Could you restate that, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that no opaque fencing or coniferous trees shall be located in the rear yard within 30 feet of Stafford Street. And that's because there are some possible, we just want to maintain sight lines there. There's a sidewalk with a lot of people crossing, little kids going to school. So we just want to make sure that that area is as open and transparent as possible.
Any questions?
Go ahead.
Let's Councilor Chambers.
Yeah, so there, it's stated, you stated at, during your presentation, thank you very much, that there are some changes that require variances now. So is it a new owner that's taken over, or is it the same owner from when it was approved
That I
in
can't speak
2021?
to, because I think the owner is a Manitoba company number, I believe. In which case, I'm not exactly sure.
Good, all right.
Sorry, it's not a numbered company, but it's Stafford and McMillan Land Development Limited.
Anyway, we can get that answer from me now.
Yeah, I just want to know why there's changes being considered from the approval in 2021.
Councilor Meeks.
Yeah, one procedure question, two super detailed questions. Procedure question. So this is coming from the director because there was a previous, I mean, normally there's a package, right? Community committee, and then it splits off. The variances come up here half the time, but the variances here weren't. Is this all to do with the change from the 2021?
What happened? Yeah, you're correct that usually zoning agreement amendments and any associated variants both go to community committee. In this case, the previous development approved in 2021, it expired. The variance, you have 2 years to establish your variance, and that deadline passed. So because the deadline passed, the applicant came back. And also, if it's been more than 2 years, it becomes a C variance decided by the director. If it's within 2 years, it has to go back to the community, but that deadline had passed. So the variance becomes a C variance decided by the director, while the zoning agreement amendment is always a council decision.
I'll have to look at the various alphanumeric definitions of these. I was not over. Two detailed questions, perhaps not what you're expecting. Much discussion of parking stall lengths and parking drive aisle here. Variances 2, C, and D. Is there a provision? Is there some requirement for width of the parking stalls? I know I feel like we had a 10-foot requirement in the infill guidelines, but I might be misremembering that. I mean, here 10-foot wide. Here you're varying from 23 feet to 18 feet for length. Any rules around width?
Yeah, that's so there's no variance for the width of parking stalls. The zoning bylaw has a required width of parking stalls of 8 feet unless you're next to a fence or wall where you need 10. There's no variance for width of the parking stalls. In this case, there is a variance for the length. The width variance is to do with the drive up, which is just a 2 foot difference.
Okay, coming to that in 30 seconds. So the first stall in, if you're next to the fence, would have to be 10 feet. Okay, but not the rest.
That's correct.
Okay.
There's a requirement for accessible stalls here, which are not 8 feet wide. Is there a variance to not have accessible parking? Does it have accessible parking?
Is that underground?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, there is no variance for that, and there is an accessible parking stall included.
There are.
Yes,
The length also.
there's actually more than one accessible stall included. A regular.
Those have to be long.
Pardon?
Those are longer than other stalls, right?
They have to be 10 feet in width.
And how long? Is it, if you got a rear loading
If they're-
van?
if they're
rear
in-
loading van.
Yeah, so if you're indoor, you need 20 feet in length. If you're off the lane, because if it's multifamily development, all stalls, including accessible stalls, need 23 feet in length technically.
Right, so the accessible stalls, no requirement for variances, okay.
That's correct. They meet the requirement. They provide them without variance.
Okay, I'm almost done.
Yeah, go ahead. I just need clarification.
Yeah, how many, so the drive aisle, is that just serving the outdoor spots, the 5 spots, or is that serving the indoor spots?
Indoor.
Oh, it's only serving the indoor.
That's correct.
Okay.
What it is it's the aisle serving the indoor parking area that leads from outside to inside. And then it continues inside the parking area, inside the building.
And we're saying it should be, if it's for a 2-way aisle, it should be 20 feet, but we're willing to go to 18 feet here.
To be specific, the drive aisle is 20 feet in width. It's just that the door providing entry to and from the drive aisle is 18 feet. So it's just the door threshold that's deficient by 2 feet. The drive aisle is compliant.
And explain to me, if you would, the insufficient buffering of a parking and loading area located within 20 feet of a side or rear lot line. I know we had some stuff around low-rise apartment buildings and 5-plexes in the infill guidelines about a 10-foot buffer, opaque fencing. Is this that? Is this something else?
This is something else. This is off the rear, and it exists because there's parking directly off a rear lane. So you can't provide that if you're doing parking off the lane. It requires a fence at minimum off the bat, which you can't do and have at the same time as having parking off the lane. So they need a variance for that.
The lane that's, so down the east side of northeast, the east side of the property, I think there's an adjacent residential property to the east.
Correct.
So what's the buffering from that?
11 feet, which I could note is larger than the 2021 proposal. They've enlarged that yard since then.
Okay, so sorry to dwell on this, but walk me through that then. Okay, so there's an 11-foot landscaped buffer between, is that from drive aisle to neighboring property, or is that just all the way down the side of the building?
All the way down beside the building, it's 11 feet. With the exception of the one stall. The one stall is in the rear yard, which is fine.
Okay, and does that exceed that? There's no variance for that.
It actually slightly exceeds the requirement in the PDU.
Okay, which would be like 10 feet or something.
So
You did use the word
did
slightly.
that up.
All right, we're gonna move on.
Yeah, well, right, eventually, if I can get that answer, that would. But I'll assume it's 10 feet or roughly so. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you. You didn't have any further questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Harris.
So we will start calling forward the appellants. First, we have Kenton Larson. Kenton, if you'd like to come forward, you have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation after you state your name.
I have a USB and it may require some moments of tech support. Thank you.
This is the same one you sent me, correct?
Yeah, yes, it is. There's actually 2 on there. Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Kenton Larson. I'm a homeowner on McMillan Avenue. I've lived there over 20 years, and I live a few doors down from the proposed development. We're here to talk variances, and I appreciate in the previous property, the person who defined variances for us. And I will say that it gets confusing pretty quickly. The variances, there's a cordon plan, there's variances, and then there's the overall structure itself. So I put together a presentation that kind of covers the ways in which, so there's the variances are deviations from the norm, and which facilitate the development, which I think is also deviates from the norm in terms of what we see in our neighborhood. And I think most notably, I have to say, it neglects the context of our neighborhood and streets accelerated development over the past 5 years. Which is the first time that it presented a plan for this property, and I'll show that in just a second. I wanted to note, as it's already been stated, the City Center Community Committee unanimously denied the zoning agreement. The Standing Committee overturned it, and I just want to say, I noted, I watched the Standing Committees. It was a marathon meeting. I think it was 7 hours or something that day, and I watched it. I just want to point out that the Standing Committee, in overturning it, heard that the balconies in this development had been removed, when in fact that's not true. They've been moved. So I just want to point that out. I think somebody just misspoke, and that's all it was. But I just want to point out that in fact the balconies have not been removed. They've been moved, and probably to a worse place. I also want to note there was some discussion at the steering committee meeting that they knew that this appeal was happening today. So I think it was an easier decision knowing it was going to come here, and then that this would work itself out here. So I think that's what's sort of put the burden on us, or on you here today. So the first thing I wanted to show here, this is the big picture of what's changed from the first development to now, and sort of what the variances are facilitating. So it's a larger structure. The lowered roof is gone. There's an extra story. It's got more apartments and commercial area, and the parking is moved from more spots underground to fewer spots at street level. There's 15 parking spots for 60 expected tenants and 2 commercial tenants. Design, color, building materials are different. And as you can see, like the balconies are now on east and west sides of the structure. So the cordon plan, and the picture you see here shows the cordon plan for north of Cordon. And you can see, I mean, it looks so different from what the proposed development is. And just the question, I've read the cordon plan many times. I've committed passages to memory, but these are some of the parts. Reflective of surrounding character, green space, preservation of existing canopy, pitched roof, consideration of light view and privacy of adjacent buildings and parallel to frontage property line. Of course, not all of these are variances, but I just want to point these out. And so I just wanted to show this as reflective of the character. This is probably, this is one street north rather, in Dorchester, of where the proposed structure is. And it shows businesses living in harmony with neighbors in a way that I think respects what the cordon plan had in mind for our neighborhood. And once again, it's we're respecting frontage property here, and and some of the other things that I've mentioned. You'll notice that the preservation of canopy, that ship has sailed, so all of the trees are gone from that lot. The cordon plan says residential development should encourage preservation of existing mature canopy shade trees and natural areas through good design. So I just wanted to say, would be nice to see as a make good for the canopy, for the trees, the mature trees being removed, to see trees, like a plan for the trees in the design. I just think, as I say, the preservation of the canopy was not honored. So I think seeing that in the plan would actually go a long way to making this plan more palatable. The cordon plan says that a roof should be pitched unless adjacent buildings are flat roofed. This is the adjacent building. And of course, at one point, the structure's roof was lowered next to this property. And that was the totality of the developer's argument at that time, was that was the major concession at that time. That concession is now gone. I just want to point out, this house has been for sale for 6 months. The price has dropped. And I think that speaks to the fact nobody really wants to live next to this structure. And I'm a few doors down. I don't really want to live next to it either. But I mean, the proof is in the for sale sign. So consideration of light view and privacy of adjacent buildings. So the view from McMillan here shows you, so the balconies there. One thing we've not heard is how close are these balconies to the property we just saw? How close are they to that property? I think where the balconies were placed the first time was probably the right place. And I think that where they're placed now is, I think, privacy of the adjacent building for sure. This is kitty corner to the proposed development. There's one major difference. So this development has 4 tenants, I believe, and then a couple commercial properties on the main floor. You can see what it does to the light and the privacy of neighbors, but some of the stuff that isn't in the plan is like there's a bank of air conditioners constantly humming at the first floor level of the neighboring property. Now, I'm not saying that's what this new development might do, but it's things like that that people, of course, wouldn't want to buy the property next door. That would make that tough. The developer's applicant refers to 60 Winnipeggers. And I think, once again, I think that fully illustrates the problem with these parking variances. Like 60 occupants, who's visiting the property, how many visitors, 2 commercial properties, how many workers, how many customers. We've got 13 parking spaces plus 1 each for commercial property. It just seems like, to me, the math doesn't add up. To me, that's the biggest issue here. I do think it's a safety issue. You're going to see another presentation today that'll get into the heart of the safety issue. But also, we've not heard, like, what are the lineups of potential commercial tenants here? Like, what are we talking about? My concern is that these are going to be tenants that will have regular traffic. And if there's 60 occupants for that many parking spaces, it's going to offload all of that pressure onto the rest of the neighborhood. And again, you are going to see a presentation today that sort of goes deeper into detail there. I want to point out that our street punches above its weight in density. At the other end of the block, we have got 2 apartment buildings pictured here, and there's no parking for either of these apartments. So everybody who lives there must park on the street. There's no other place that they can do it. I also want to point out that on the third corner of, once again, within the same block, is a recently approved structure that will be going up where you see that house. And once again, that structure has reduced parking as well. So I think that just, once again, a little more pressure. And just in terms of our overall neighborhood, this is going up at Grosvenor and Wentworth. We're just seeing, like, since the developer's first application 5 years ago, so much of this has come to the neighborhood that I think like, you can't compare the neighborhood then to what the neighborhood is now. I just think this you see the undue hardships coming a mile away. I just want to say, like, we as neighbors, we know something is going to go there. But this particular thing, it just doesn't look like anything else that's in the neighborhood. I don't think it's in line with anybody's vision for the neighborhood. I think it ignores the neighborhood's context and the streets, as I said, the streets accelerated development over the past 5 years. And I've said it a few times, and I'll say it one more time, but I think this developer has made a plan for a property that it wishes it had, not the property it actually has and the neighborhood it actually has. And so it's for that reason, I just respectfully ask you to grant the appeal and to deny these variances. Thank you very much.
Question.
Yeah, if you go back to the slide where that house was on and that and approved, you said something about parking.
Yeah, we're,
Go back a previous slide, 11.
where am I? Sorry.
Yeah, here it is.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, it's in inverse mouse. I didn't realize.
Oh, no, yeah,
This one?
Yeah, no, not that one, the next one.
That one.
No, go the other direction. No, go down, down one.
This
more.
one.
One more. That one there.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so you state on that one that there's no parking.
Reduced parking,
There's re-
according to the variance.
Okay, so there's reduced parking.
Yeah.
But there's also will be a demand for more parking?
Well, it says that, I'm not as familiar with this, but I took a picture of the variance sign, which is the extent of my knowledge here, but it says, where 5 parking spaces instead of 9 is the variance on that, so that's what I'm basing it on.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yep, Councilor Mason, question?
So is there any issue with how close this comes to the property on the east?
Well,
There's no variance on that, I don't think, but sorry.
Well, there's balconies there, and we've not heard actually in all our times being here, how close are these balconies exactly? Like there's been a lot of people going, this looks bad, having these balconies that neighbor this property. Given the variances, now where does that put these balconies?
Okay.
And we've not heard actually what the distance is between the balconies and the neighboring property.
Okay, I can ask that.
Okay.
As this goes on, and so Mr. Chair, if I can ask the planners, how wide and lot size dimensions? I'm not finding it here. I'm sure it's here somewhere, but I'm thrashing around trying to find it. So lot size dimensions here.
The
Yeah.
lot size dimensions. I know it is 12,060 square feet in size. In terms of the dimensions, I can find that for you.
Meantime, I'll ask the
Yep, fine.
presenter, those 2 apartment blocks you referred to, those were built in the turn of the ninth into the early 1900s?
I think so. They must be.
Yeah, so ours, I
Yeah.
got a couple of those apartments.
Yeah.
No parking because it's supposed to run carriages.
Right, exactly. They're beautiful apartments, but
Yeah.
they do make everybody put their car on the
I
street.
remember seeing those when I could see back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Councilor, means to answer your question. The property is 100 feet wide along McMillan Avenue and 120 feet deep.
Okay. Paved lane, I assume?
Pardon?
Paved lane?
Yes.
Okay,
Great. Any questions of the appellant?
no, sorry.
No, okay, sir, you can come back and, no new information, but you can come back and, rebut anything you hear, during the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I can call forward our next appellant, Caroline Traeger. I apologize if I mispronounced that. You'll have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. Same presentation? Okay. And do I have a copy of that one as well? Do I have a copy of that presentation as well?
You do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is any of the, while we wait, Mr. Chair, is any of the parking underground now? Am I misreading this?
Most of the parking's inside the building on the ground floor.
Okay.
I should know there is a car
Not
care
underground,
vehicle
but inside.
as well.
Okay. So 10 in, 5 out?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Mr. Barnard, to just speak a little louder when answering questions, please.
I will try. My microphone is on, is it?
Yes, but it's not broadcast back into the room just because there would be a lot of feedback. So yeah, they can't be relied on for that.
Okay, my apologies. I will speak up.
It's okay. Age related thing happened.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Speak this every time, but I'm really bad at presentations, so I'm looking down and reading.
But if you could speak up as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Caroline. I live a few houses down from 915 McMillan. I've lived here for over 20 years. This development has been in the works for nearly 5 years. Today, I'll focus on the safety concerns related to traffic and parking, as congestion in our area has significantly increased during this time. The next two slides cover some quick facts. The proposed development sits on a block surrounded by a diverse mix of housing on the adjacent McMillan and Dorchester blocks, including single-family homes, condos, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and large apartment buildings. This isn't a uniform street of single-family homes. It has a rich variety of housing with both owners and renters. The back alley between McMillan and Dorchester typically has between 52 to 60 vehicles. On McMillan, there are between 120 to 160 people living on the block. This is a range because it all depends on the number of renters at any given time. For example, we have a duplex rental property beside us, and we've had up to 12 people living in that residence, so it can fluctuate. And that brought 6 cars. Slide 3. In the immediate vicinity, Kenton had gone over this. There are 3 large apartment buildings highlighted in blue. They are over 100 years old. 890 McMillan on the same block as the proposed development has 22 apartments. 847 McMillan and 195 Wentworth. It's one building with 2 addresses located right beside our block, has 16 apartments, and 915 Corden Avenue has 28 apartments. None of these buildings have parking. They rely on street parking or renting parking spots from residents or commercial properties. Proposed developments highlighted in orange. 915 McMillan has 30 residential units, 2 commercial units, 15 parking spots. 850 McMillan, currently a rental house, is a proposed development with 9 units and 5 parking stalls. And this doesn't even account for all the other developments, both completed and proposed within a 2 to 3 block radius of this proposed development at 915 McMillan. These 2 photos show the shared back alley between McMillan and Dorchester during a typical winter. Photo 1 looks towards Stafford and the proposed development at 915 McMillan. Photo 2 looks toward Wentworth. These photos highlight several key issues. Snow buildup is a major problem during an average winter, as properties have nowhere to store excess snow, leading to rapid accumulation in the alley. On cold winter days, residents without parking often park in the alley to plug them in. The alley is already narrow for maneuvering. If you add snow, garbage, and recycling bins, some properties have multiple bins due to the number of units. It becomes even tighter. In photo 1, near the proposed 915 McMillan development, spring melt creates a large water buildup from Stafford to the alley's midpoint. This lake can persist for weeks, trapping cars and requiring neighbors to clear blockages manually. These issues illustrate the existing strain on the alley, raising concerns about how additional development will impact traffic and accessibility. Other ways we lose parking and can get congestion. Commercial properties, commercial properties on Corden and Stafford have limited parking, so employees and customers park on McMillan. Photo 1, renovation and repairs. There's no parking for tradespeople when renovating or repairing properties. They need to block off the front street to complete the work, or they park in the back alley, blocking access to one side of the alley. This also occurs with moving vans because we have such a high rental. rate. Weather. Weather is a big issue for parking and driving on our block and alley. Water pooling occurs not only in the back alley, but the front. And as you can see, no one can park where that water is currently at, and that lasted quite a while. Slide 6 is major collision hotspots. The intersection of Corden Avenue and Stafford Street is a high collision hotspot. We're the street next to this we are the street next to this hotspot. These are stats from 2013 to 2019, and I'm pretty sure if you did a more recent study, you'd find it's gotten worse. You can constantly hear accidents from our house. The intersection of Stafford and Grosvenor, which is on the other side of our street, has a lot of accidents also. For example, the Grove had a car hit its patio, and a person I ride the bus with was hit on his bike last summer and broke his ribs. We also had 2 weeks ago on Lilac and Grosvenor, another accident, which was pretty bad. This development would add another 40 to 60 vehicles plus commercial vehicles to the mix. Perhaps it's time for a traffic safety analysis of our area before any more developments are approved. The developer's illustration doesn't reflect reality. It presents wide streets and sidewalks, ample parking, the lush greenery, but that's not the true picture. The scale and perspective of the surrounding buildings are also inaccurate. The photo shows the real Stafford. The street and sidewalk are much narrower than depicted. Any greenery placed close to the road and sidewalk won't survive. We were walking one day and saw a truck actually go up the sidewalk because he didn't like how slow the car in front of him was going. It's just hazardous. Stafford has become a heavily traveled road, making it increasingly dangerous. The proposed development at 915 McMillan includes 30 units housing approximately 60 people. This was the developer's estimate. 2 commercial units. My question to the councillors are, why do we need any more commercial spaces? Since COVID, demand for brick and mortar retail and office space has declined. Corden, Stafford, and Grosvenor already have many vacant commercial spaces for lease. A lack of parking has forced some businesses to leave. Gravity Lingerie, which was at 252 Stafford, it relocated due to insufficient parking. Many businesses have left because of a lack of parking. Most recently, Corden Hardware and October Boutique are now empty for lease on Corden, among many other storefronts that just don't have anybody in them anymore. Only 15 parking spots, despite the potential for 40 to 60 resident vehicles, plus commercial and customer parking needs. Key issues. Parking congestion, the back alley and McMillan's front street are already at capacity. This development could add 40 to 60 more cars, worsening the issue and causing frustration and more accidents. Traffic congestion. Over the past 2 years, traffic has increased significantly due to new developments and more vehicles traveling down Corden, Stafford, and Grosvenor as vehicle usage in the city increases. Safety concerns, blind corners, large new developments, including this one, have reduced visibility at intersections, making them more dangerous. Obstructed sightlines. The proposed development includes 2 trees near the alley entrance from Stafford, further blocking visibility. I think the sightline also in the front is going to be an issue as you're turning right from McMillan onto Stafford. Speeding and cut through traffic. Drivers bypass congestion by cutting through McMillan and Dorchester and down the adjoining alley, often at high speeds to beat traffic. With limited space and unexpected obstacles, the situation becomes even more hazardous. Increasing accidents. Residents have seen and heard more collisions, including vehicle on vehicle, vehicle on bike, vehicle on pedestrian, vehicle on building, and vehicle on animal incidents. This photo shows the parking on McMillan Avenue, the same block as the proposed development. This is a real photo. I have many of these. It's constantly like this. I live on the street. I take the bus. I walk, and I bike to work and to run my errands. I see that most people rely on their cars in our area. Riding your bike is just hazardous and deadly. The new bus routes coming in July I don't believe they're going to increase bus ridership. For me and others who ride regularly on the same routes, our commute times will increase from 40 minutes to an hour to travel to and from work. One of the reasons for a lot of this development was because we had such great bus lines that would take you quickly to your location. And I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I see firsthand the congestion and safety issues caused by these developments and the increased traffic on Stafford, Grosvenor, and Corden. Lack of parking continues to be a major issue. This is already a high-density neighborhood with significant congestion. There are 3 large structures currently in the planning stages, and many more have gone up on Grosvenor in the past 4 years. Safety concerns and rising accidents are a reality, not just a possibility. The developer's illustrations fail to show the true scale of what's happening, and they don't reflect our narrow streets, existing traffic and parking challenges, or the actual number and size of structure around it. I do want to point out that the community has flagged these issues with the developer, and they made no changes to the building. I just maybe like 2 minutes.
I'll move it. 2-minute extension.
Yeah.
If I may, Mr.
All those in favor? All right, nobody's opposed. Go ahead, man.
No 2 streets in this neighborhood are the same, and they shouldn't be treated that way. Yet over the past 5 years, we've seen an onslaught of large developments that have disregarded the area's building guidelines and the needs, safety, and quality of life of the people who live there. We're in a different place than we were 5 or even 2 years ago. Perhaps it's time for the city to reevaluate this area, to take into account the volume of development that has already happened, to listen to the people who live here, and to shift the focus away from unchecked expansion and back to the well-being of the community itself. This development isn't the right fit for this spot, the people living here, or for the people who will rent there. This is not affordable housing. This development is profit priorities over people and community. Smart growth isn't just about today. It's about creating a sustainable, livable community and city that works for both current and future residents. Building responsibly isn't about maximizing square footage on every lot. It's about balancing development with sustainability, livability, and long-term success. I understand that development is necessary, but there's a way to build that respects the character of a community, the people who live there, and the environment. These developments should be integrated without compromising existing neighborhoods or the lives of those who live there or will live there. The goal should be progress that benefits everyone, not just profit. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councilors? No. Thank you very much for your very thorough presentation. You are an appellate, so you have the ability to come back and rebut anything, but no new information. Okay.
Okay, our next appellant is Bob Sider or Cedar. If you'd like to come forward, you'll have up to 10 minutes to make a presentation.
Hi, my name is Bob Sider. My wife and I live directly across the back lane from this proposed development. I just like to point out that this room and this space is extremely intimidating. And just to point out that I think it's the nature of the beast. I don't think there's anything you can do about it, but you can appreciate that there are a lot of people, I think, that could come here and submit, but it's just a little too tough for them to do so. But after that being said, I'd also like to say that the previous item on the agenda, all the appellants there who made their presentation were excellent, and I thought we could CC all of those comments into this project also, because they were very good and very, very elaborate and spoke very well. So I will start. This will be a little different from most presentations that are concerning this type of situation, but I think that this will come from a different viewpoint, because I think all the other practical considerations with the variances will be spoken more eloquently by the people that are presenting other than myself. We who live on the prairies are blessed with the influence of our landscape. One of our own, Marshall McLuhan, summarized what growing up here in Winnipeg meant to him and the effect it had on him in how he thought about things. And I quote, "The Westerner doesn't have a point of view. He has a panorama. He has such a lot of space around him," unquote. This view is natural to us in this city. It is inherently against our grain when this view is restricted, when we have limited access to the sky and direct sunlight. I think Marshall McLuhan was so perceptive and aware of what a profound influence this has on who we are. If we are denied these fundamentals, it affects who we are, how we think, and how we feel. This proposed project, because we live directly across the back lane from it, will deny these fundamentals that we had taken for granted when we purchased our home in 2011. I say taken for granted because we just assumed at the time that things would more or less stay the same. We had confidence with the zoning laws in place. We should have had confidence that we would never have to worry about what we are dealing with here today. How did it come to this? Why were most people in the affected neighborhood not informed about anything till the process was already well underway? Is this process ever evaluated? If so, how and who does the evaluations? Why were zoning designations already discussed and more or less decided upon before my wife and I, who live directly across, like I said, from this place, were kept completely in the dark? How can what was once 3 properties on a residential street now take on a zoning designation meant for a high traffic street? This is completely wrong in my view. Let us not be swayed by a developer who has a point of view that their job is to make as much profit as possible with the least amount of expenses. Let us not be swayed by the point of view that we have access to federal money, so we better not waste it. Let us not be swayed by the point of view that we need infill housing at all cost. Sure, one can argue that each of these points of view may have merit on their own. Now let us consider what a panoramic perspective might look like here. Well, the benefit of a panorama is that you can see every possible point of view. When you do this, you notice other things. Oh, this is quite a unique neighborhood. There is a community of people here with common interest that are attracted to this area because of the physicality of the structures, the like-minded people, and the uniqueness of the whole community around them. We have world-renowned architects who live right here in our city. We have amazing landscape architects. We have a special piece of land here. We have an opportunity here. Oh, sorry, I'm touching something. Sorry about that. We have an opportunity here, a gift, not only to our neighborhood, but possibly to the city of Winnipeg to really do something special here. I would like to propose that a panoramic view, this consideration of all views, be the foundation of all planning decisions. That this be incorporated into your mission statement. With this mindset as a starting point, we can then reasonably expect the best outcomes. Sasha Radulovic, one of the co-founding partners of the architecture firm 5468796 Architecture, after their firm had won an international award, said, quote, promoting infill housing and multifamily housing is so important to us, and this award is proof that you can produce housing of a very high quality. I am asking you to please give value to and be sensitive to considerations that may not align with some points of view. These same points of view that have already had a huge head start in this whole process. Being more inclusive, more holistic is natural for us. It is much easier for us to go with this flow than to go forward with blinkers on. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, sir. Do we have any questions, colleagues? No? Okay,
Thank you.
for your different perspective. I do have one question.
Oh, sure.
Are you saying that the developer did not do any consultation in the neighborhood about what they were looking to build?
At the last presentation, I heard that he did do some consulting or send some letters around, but I did not receive anything, and most of my neighbors did not receive anything, so I don't know where this was, how much, to what extent this was done.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
You can come back.
Correct, yeah.
You can come back and rebut near the end. Okay.
All right, I will call forward our next appellant, Barry Ottenbright.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Ottenbright. I am a resident of the neighborhood. I live at 897 McMillan Avenue. I've lived there for over 30 years. Winnipeg is fortunate to have some of the finest historic communities in the country, and I consider the McMillan neighborhood as one of the best in the city. I'm also an architect, and the focus of my work over the last 10 years has been multifamily residential projects in Winnipeg and across the West, Calgary, Edmonton, Regina. And so I bring this knowledge and this experience to my concerns with the proposed development. The two most serious variance concerns that I have are variance items 1E and 1F. Variance item 1E, the construction of a mixed-use building having a lot area per dwelling unit of 400 square feet in lieu of 800 square feet. The current design proposes 30 residential units plus 2 commercial units for a total of 32 units. This works out to a development density of 116 units per acre on the site. This is an extraordinarily high density, particularly for an infill project in a predominantly single-family residential neighborhood. I could not understand where the precedent for this type of density in this type of neighborhood originated. I completed an analysis to confirm what the current state of multifamily developments is in the neighborhood. And I had made a submission, I'm reading from my submission that I submitted yesterday. So there's a plan that's attached to that, and I hope you guys all have that plan because I'm going to be referring to it. Should have brought one last time I brought the plan. So 116 units per acre. I completed an analysis to confirm what the current state of the multifamily developments is in the neighborhood. The analysis area included the area bounded by Corden Avenue to the south, Grosvenor Avenue to the north, Wentworth and Harrow Streets to the east and west. 16 multifamily developed residential properties were identified, including 12 newer developments completed under recent zoning bylaw requirements and 4 historic multifamily buildings completed in the early 1900s. You've seen some of the images of those buildings in the previous presentations. These 16 multifamily residential developments that are shown on the map in colored on the plan that I submitted are developments that include 4 units or more. Everything in gray and the rest of that map are either single family homes, duplexes, or triplexes. So this just considered anything over 4 units in the development. So it included the four historic multifamily residential buildings that got completed in the early 1900s. These are included for reference as they fall within the analysis area and are an integral part of the neighborhood fabric, keeping in mind that these historic multifamily buildings were developed prior to any associated parking requirements. So what the analysis shows, and if you look at the chart that is included on the plan, of the 12 newer developments, new multifamily development sites, and I'm really just looking at the larger ones, the 6 of the larger ones that range in density from 30 to 40 units up to 50 to 60 units. The average density is 45.6 units per acre. If you factor in the historic multifamily sites, again, keeping in mind that they don't include any allowance for parking, the average is 62 units per acre. That's a lot lower than 116 units per acre. As an architect directly involved in the design and construction of multifamily residential developments, I recognize the need for densification of mature residential neighborhoods. I'm in favor of a mixed-use, multi-use development on this site. My primary concern is the unprecedented development density of 116 units per acre. Based on the analysis, the appropriate density for the 915 McMillan site, consistent with other developments in the area, is 50 units per acre, 50%, less than 50% of the proposed density. A 16-unit development represents a 500% increase in the density and is consistent with the precedent neighborhood developments. My second major item variance concern is item 1F, the construction of a mixed-use building having 15 parking spaces instead of 26 parking spaces. Parking has been discussed already by others from the neighborhood. Parking has been an issue on McMillan Avenue for decades, and I've lived there for 3 decades. McMillan serves as an overflow parking for numerous commercial establishments on Corden Avenue, as well as other residential developments. McMillan between Stafford and Wentworth Streets also serves as parking for the 2 historic apartment buildings on this block, as well as one in Corden that provides no on-site parking. Densification of mature neighborhoods without appropriate parking makes no sense. Reducing the zoning parking requirement by 50% further aggravates this issue. So basically what I'm saying is I'm excited about the idea of having a new development, multifamily mixed-use development on the street. What I'm hoping for is that we have one that is appropriate with the precedent developments in the neighborhood, the appropriate scale, and addresses what is an ongoing issue with the parking that has been identified by others.
Thank you, sir. Questions?
Yeah, I had some. Yes, I think the St. Vital perspective on McMillan is just, that's where there's no parking when you're going to visit going to a business on Corden. I mean, so I think that is notorious. So if one E isn't allowed as a variance, then you're looking at and all these things always get expressed differently as units per number of square footage. It's sort of back and forth and around. If that were denied, then the parking thing more or less takes care of itself, doesn't it? I mean, if you're saying exactly. You can have 15, 16 units, then, well, at least you're pretty close to 1 per unit at that stage.
Yeah. I agree 100% with the way that density is addressed in the zoning bylaw, you know, like so many square feet per unit. The industry metric is actually units per, or number of units per acre, so it's much easier to understand, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that the original zoning of 800 square feet per unit is appropriate. It was the right metric for that neighborhood. To go to half it or double the density, to me, makes no sense. And my analysis demonstrated that that hasn't happened anywhere in that neighborhood. The closest area where you'd find that kind of density is probably on, you know, Corridon Avenue. There's I think an 8-story apartment building on Corridon where you might get up close to that 116 units per acre, or Wellington Crescent. And this is the corner of McMillan and Stafford. This is not McMillan or Wellington Crescent. This is a single family, you know, residential neighborhood.
So, I mean, if that variance is denied, I mean, it's still the same, one could still build the same
exactly
floor plate, floor plan. But it's just.
But
the numbers
it would be different. Yeah. It would be different, and it could be different, and quite honestly, it could be better. And what I'm looking for is better. I don't want half measures. I want to be proud of my neighborhood as I have been over the last 32 years. People care about the neighborhood here. And, you know, as an architect, I rush in and I'm probably designing the building that should be there already. And I know how these things could be corrected. You had asked about the community consultation, and there really wasn't any meaningful community consultation whatsoever. And I know, because I've done community consultations in my career, dozens of them. And this was nothing compared. This didn't meet any type of standard, quite honestly. And had it had appropriate community consultation, we wouldn't be here. They would have had appropriate feedback from the community, because these people are interested. They would have attended the meetings. They would have contributed. You need the full team from the development side at those meetings. That includes the architect, that includes the owner, that includes the landscape architect and other planners. That's how you do meaningful community consultation. And that's where those things can be raised and they can be addressed at the planning stage rather than at this approval stage.
And I always appreciate your delegations over the years, so thank you for that. That's all my question.
Yeah. Councilor Chambers, any question?
Yeah, no, I had a question, lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
I have a question. You talk of building in other cities, but so this is kind of so I'm a developer, I'm hiring an architect, I have this property, and any multifamily you're building, somebody's looking to make money, right? So instead of 800 square feet per unit, we're going to 400. So in a city like Calgary, when you're going to build, what is the ability to get market rent for an 800 square foot apartment versus a 400 square foot apartment? You get what I'm saying? There's an ability to get a certain amount of money for rent. How do you balance that in the Winnipeg market, not the Calgary market? I believe they can get much higher rents in Calgary.
Oh, the rents in Alberta, even in Saskatchewan, are much higher than they are in Winnipeg, which is, a factor for attracting developers to the province, to the city, because rent does have an impact on development. I think your question is, if is a 800 square foot apartment twice the rent as a 400 square foot apartment? I think the answer is no. The 400 square foot apartment is going to be much more than half of the rent of an 800 square foot.
I was just getting at ultimately a developer's looking to make money, right? So,
Yeah, and
an architect is gonna design something to help that developer meet the goal, is that correct?
right. And when I looked at this, the plans for this development, I knew right away that it was an exercise in maximizing the number of units you could get on that site. Does that make it right? No.
Just not saying it's right or not,
I'm saying the city had it right to begin with. 800 square foot per unit on this site is the right density for this neighborhood. And I think that's the more important thing.
yeah. Have you looked at the secondary plan? You heard from our planner that, it's actually within the Gordon Avenue plan and on some other aspects of the Gordon Osborne Village.
I'm not overly familiar with it.
You know, Great, thank you.
Is there a question?
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead, Councilor Chu.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you are okay with development, but in terms of this one with amendments?
Yes, personally, that's my opinion.
So
That's,
what would those amendments be?
well, the primary one is density, the number of units.
Okay.
I'm saying the appropriate number of units for that site is 16. And that's based on facts. That's based on an analysis that anybody can do.
Parking?
The parking, as Councillor Mays suggested, if you ask the number of units, then that number of parking stalls, 15 or 16 or whatever it was, is appropriate.
And in terms of the commercial on the first floor, is there any suggested kind of activity, like what would be more amenable over something else?
I don't know how much control you can put on commercial rental properties, but ideally it would be something that would service the neighborhood.
So professional services over retail.
Yeah, that would be, yeah.
That's it.
Okay, I think that's all the questions then. Thank you, sir. You are a registered appellant, so you are able to come back and rebut.
Okay, so that concludes those who had pre-registered to speak in support of the appeal. Just to confirm, is there anyone else here who would like to speak in support of the appeal? Seeing none, we can move on to those in opposition. I'll call forward the applicant, John Winthrop.
Hi, let me get my presentation going. Excellent. Good afternoon. Here we are at call 24, April 23rd, 2025 for the public hearing for item number 2, variances at 915 McMillan. My name is John Scott Winthrop. I'm a planner, professional planner, member of CIP as well as AICP, lead green associate and accredited with the Congress of New Urbanism. This application started off in 2020 with a subdivision rezoning and some variances. There were public hearings, went through the City Center Community Committee. Eventually, all those subdivision rezonings and variances were approved back in 2021, I believe it was. we're here for 30 dwelling units, not 160. I'm here for 30 dwelling units with 15 parking stalls. We did a zoning agreement amendment. We filed the application back on June of last year. We went to the City Center Community Committee for a public hearing. It went to council approval and we're in a new agreement. That council approval was in March of this year. These variances took a separate process. The variances were again submitted June 26th of last year. We're on day 302 now. The variances went to the director and then other people appealed these. I'm the applicant, not the appellant. We need the variances approved before we can get to construction. Here for a 4-story residential building within 800 meters of high frequency transit for some variances. 915 McMillan is in the McMillan neighborhood, Fort Rouge, East Fort Garry Ward, 1 block north of Corden Avenue, 2 blocks south of Grosvenor, at the northeast corner of Stafford and McMillan, zoned RMU. Our Winnipeg bylaw, I'll refer to as Plan Winnipeg. Plan Winnipeg locates these lands in a mature community. The policies enable the proposed land use, and the policies do not regulate structures under Plan Winnipeg. Under Plan Winnipeg, we're in a intensification target area. We are also in the Corden Osborne area secondary plan. I'll refer to it as a secondary plan for this presentation. We have, I'd say, split policy areas along the property. I'll get into that in a little bit. A low-rise mixed-use area and a medium-density residential area. The policy areas for both of these enable the proposed land use, and the building heights policies should range from 2 to 4 stories. In the one of the policy areas, and the other policy area has a maximum building heights on corners of 4 stories. We are a 4-story building. We are outside the PDO Mature Communities Overlay. We are outside the PDO 1 Malls and Corridors Overlay. We are inside the PDO 1 Corden Osborne. We're within the area 7, the medium density residential area, and 4B, the low rise, mixed use area. Within 15-minute walking of this location, it's considered very walkable. Walk score of 79, good transit, 88 for very bikeable. Calvin High School is an 8-minute walk to the north. The Grove Pub, 3-minute walk to the north. Starbucks and Tim Hortons and the Rexall at the corner of Stafford and Corden is 2 minutes to the south. Food Fair is a 6-minute walk to the east. Grant Avenue is 10 minutes to the south. Currently, our current transit has a number of transit routes that are nearby along Stafford, Corden, as well as Grosvenor. In 2025, transit 2025, we are going to be 36 meters from a D11 transit stop. So the D11 is a direct bus that will go up and down Stafford. The D19 will be a direct bus going up and down Corden. And then there will be the D16 going up and down Grosvenor. This is a very transit-rich area in 2025 with 3 direct lines within 170 meters of this location. We also have, we're 850 meters from the FX3 at Grant and Stafford. That will be the future, I believe, Rose Line. We have a number of multiple cycling routes along Grosvenor, Harrow, Ruskin Row, Warsaw in the area. We have, we're within the flow zone of Peg City Car Co-op. There are within walking distance a Peg City Car Co-op at a fixed station at 842 McMillan and at 847 Corden. So within walking distance already existing Peg City Car Co-op, as well as we're in the flow zone. Stafford has no front driveways, it's concrete sidewalk, no stopping during rush hour. It's a P1 66 feet wide. It's a 24-hour truck route. It's Route 70 and it's a winter route. McMillan is a secondary street, has no front driveways, concrete sidewalk, on-street parking. It's a P3. It is 66 feet wide, which would be, it's a very wide right-of-way actually, it's 66 feet. The public lane is concrete, has garages, gravel, it's 20 feet wide. It connects Stafford to Wentworth, and along that back lane is an absence of buffering as all the vehicles exit and enter that back lane from the rear of properties. Surrounding lands include C2, R1, R2, CMU to the southwest, C1 to the west, and RMF to the northwest. So we have a mixture of zonings along Stafford and nearby. Surrounding lands directly to the north are multiple dwellings. They front Dorchester. There's no buffering along the lane. To the northwest is a 4-story residential building, has a reduced yard on Stafford of 7.5 feet. There is no buffering along the lane. Variances were granted in 2010 and 2012 to allow that 4-story residential building to be constructed kitty corner to us to the northwest. Directly west is a commercial 2-story building. It also has no buffering along the lane. Directly southwest of us is a mixed-use commercial residential building fronting Stafford. It's 4 stories. It has a 3-foot yard along Stafford, a 13-foot yard along McMillan, a 13-foot rear yard along the public lane, no buffering along the lane, and it was a variance granted in 2019. Directly southwest is multiple dwellings fronting Stafford. They're older buildings. A single detached dwelling fronts McMillan. There's landscaping along the yards against McMillan. To the east of us is a single detached dwelling. It fronts McMillan. It has fencing and landscaping along their west side yard, which is against our property. Nearby, reduced yards include Stafford, the Tim Hortons at the corner of Corden, and Stafford has a reduced side yard against Stafford. I believe that's less than 10 feet. The northwest building directly to the northwest of us has a reduced yard along Stafford, less than a couple of feet. That's 227 Stafford. It has a reduced yard along McMillan. Variances were granted a couple of years ago for that. The 4-story building to the northwest of us has 0 yard for parking against Stafford. And the picture right now I'm showing on the screen is a white Volvo with, I think that's 1 foot from the side, maybe 2 feet from the sidewalk, no screening. Directly to the north of us, in the picture I'm showing you, it has a wood barrier fence along the Stafford, and then it has a white Honda, maybe 4 feet from the concrete sidewalk along Stafford. No fencing, no landscaping. 909, I believe, Dorchester, I think it is, where there's a restaurant with 0 yard along Stafford. As I mentioned, we're in the Corden Osborne secondary plan. We're a low-rise, mixed-use, medium-density area, zone RMU. We're in the PDO Corden. We're a 12,000 square foot lot. It's 100 feet by 120, 100 feet of frontage along McMillan, 120 feet deep. It's a corner lot. It's rectangular in shape. The westerly 30 feet is the low-rise mixed-use area. The easterly is the medium density residential area under the Corden Osborne area plan, as well as the PDOs. So I'll say we have almost split PDO and split policy areas. The westerly is 33 feet, is a different policy area. The lands are currently vacant, nothing on it. It's mud. Variances, 13 variances were approved in 2020. Ranging everything from reduced yards, front yard, corner side yard, west yard, rear yards, lot area, insufficient landscaping, and insufficient parking. So 13 variances were approved in January of 2021. Today I'm here for a 4-story building, 46 feet in height, residential entrances along McMillan. Balconies are on the east and west side only. 2,785 square feet of commercial on the ground floor with the commercial entrances along Stafford. 30 dwelling units, parking directly from the rear public lane, ground level parking underneath the building and behind the commercial, indoors, 15 stalls. Again, we'll have 10 indoor parking stalls, 5 outdoor with direct access to the lane, 16 bicycle parking, a 5-foot front yard along McMillan, a 3-foot side yard on Stafford. We're going to have a 10-foot side yard, setback against the public lane, and 11-foot east side yard against 909 McMillan. Would like me to continue?
Yeah, move extension. Minutes you need.
2 minutes, we'll try.
Move a 3-minute extension.
All those in favor? Nobody's opposed. That's carried.
So the proposed developments, I'm here for a number of variants. The plan Winnipeg nor the applicable secondary plan requires the variances at issue here. Regulate the variances at issue here. As I demonstrated, they're complying. Variances are required to overcome the injurious effect of the zoning bylaw on the use of the property. We're looking for variances for the front yards, a west corner side yard again, a rear yard again, a lot area and parking again, and some variances related to the parking off the back of the property. The 5-foot front yard setback on McMillan is only 40% of the building. It's located at the southwest corner. A 3-foot side yard against Stafford is 100% of the building along Stafford. We pushed the building over to increase the east side yard to 11 feet before. Under the previous approval, it was a lot less than that. So we've increased it to 11 feet to pull the building closer to Stafford and away from the existing house. We have a 10-foot rear side yard. It's only at 32% of the building at the northwest corner is that 10-foot where that reduction is. No visitor parking. If need be, we'll label one of the couple of visitor stalls. The 18-foot parking stall is for 2 stalls only. They're located next to the garbage container and the stairs. That's only 2 stalls are 18 feet. The drive aisle for 18 feet is only at the door entrance for the indoor parking, not for the drive aisle itself, but at the indoor entrance. The insufficient buffering at the rear property line is along the entire north property line against the back lane because we have vehicles exiting and entering in the back lane, like all the other structures along the back lane. What are the notable shifts between 2020 and 2024? Previously, we had underground parking. This one is at grade behind the commercial. That one, previously it was 4 stories to the west, and then it went down to 3 stories to the east. This one's 4 stories across the planned area in compliance with the secondary plan. Previously, it was 22 dwelling units. We're now at 30. We've reduced parking down to 15. The amount of commercial has increased slightly to approximately by 300 square feet. We now have a bike room we didn't before, and we have the Moloch waste system, which is earth ground bins. We changed the east side yard from 6 feet to 11 feet to pull away. And the west side yard is still the same. The north side yard against the back lane, previously it was 4 feet. We're making it 12 feet now. We're not going to have any outdoor patios. We did before. Balconies were previously on the north and south side of the buildings. We're not now. We've actually reduced the number of variances from 13 down to 9. We're going to landscape along McMillan. Again, as I mentioned, 40% of the building is set back 5 feet. Majority of the building is greater than that at setback of 12 to 24 feet. Want me to finish it up in like 1 minute? The rear yard variance is only 32% of the building requires a 10-foot rear yard. There's lots of it's an amenity-rich area with transit and Peg City Park car co-op, so we have alternate modes of transportation. Parking's been reduced across many cities across North America. The units are between 401 square feet up to over 1,000 square feet. The ground floor commercial, it faces to the west, and it's in the westerly 33 feet where the secondary plan says you're supposed to have ground floor commercial. Type of tenants, we have nobody fixed. It could be a restaurant, daycare, office, personal service, retail, or it could be eventually a live work if that goes into it. We did do public engagement, though it wasn't a requirement. We're looking for 30 dwelling units today with 15 parking stalls because we believe it meets section 2473 of the City of Winnipeg Charter. Thank you for the extension of time and allowing me to speak here today. I'm sure there's questions.
Thank you. Very thorough, John, as always. A couple of things, but really focusing just on the density measure. Mr. Ottenbreit is saying, look, the existing zoning is dwelling unit 800 square feet per dwelling unit, which is what the report says, that's in front of us. Do you take any issue with that? I mean, you've got that there, I think, under 1D.
Yeah, 1D, a lot area per dwelling unit of 400 square feet instead of 800 square feet. If this was zoned RFM large and I took away the commercial allowance, then I wouldn't need that variance. But the RMU shares the same density as R2 and RFM medium. So that's why I need that variance.
Can you went through your,
yeah.
Here's the brain busting question. If you need a variance to get to 400 square feet per unit, but the smallest unit you had was 401. How, yeah, something's not adding up here. The average has got to be more than 400.
So the way the city of Winnipeg does is you take the lot area and you divide it into zoning category, say R2, you take the lot area and divide it by 800. If it's zoned multifamily medium, you take the lot area and divide it by 800, and that tells you the number of allowable units. It doesn't say this is the minimum unit size. This is the density essentially. So R2, RFM medium, RMU, I think CMU, I call them the mushy middle. They all have the same density of you take the lot area, divide by 800. RFM small is you take the lot area and divide by 1250, and that tells you the number of allowable units. Multifamily large is you take the lot area and divide it by 400, and that tells you the number of units on this piece of land. That doesn't mean I'm not looking to get whatever the math is. I'm here for the number of units that we're looking for, which is 30 dwelling units. If I was zone multifamily large when it was instead of RMU and took away the commercial component and just did residential, I'd have a higher density building. So that's how the city of Winnipeg calculates density on a lot.
My question perhaps could have been worded more clearly. You had a later slide there that was, I started 400, my smallest unit's
Okay.
studio that's 400.
401 is the smallest, yeah, studio, and then there's several that are between 5 and 547, 886, and then there are some 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath units.
Is my question unclear here, Andrew? What am I missing here? Because you're needing a variance because your average lot area size is 400 square feet.
No.
Isn't it?
No, so you take the lot area, which is, let me go back to.
And yet every unit is clearly bigger than 400.
Can I rephrase it?
So you take the 12,060 square feet
Yeah.
and divide that by 800, and that's the number of allowable units that I'm allowed here.
Mr. Winthrop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why didn't you ask for, say, the density at 500 square feet? For, like, what you've done is you said, here's large, we're gonna ask for 400. You know, the average that you're proposing in this particular building, because you have X number of square feet. Why did you ask for, say, 600 or 500? Because you have one unit that is 400, or?
Yeah, I wish I could ask, but so I made my application in June. I'm just happy to get the public hearing within a year. If I take my lot area, which is 12,060 square feet divided by 800, I'm allowed 15 units. The city says I need a variance for, because I'm higher than that number, even though I'm only doing. So I wish I could ask for things. I just asked to get processed.
So you're boxed in terms of that you're.
Yeah, as soon as I wish I could, I'll try to make changes to the plan, etc. But we're looking for 30 dwelling units here. I'm only allowed 15. I need a variance for density. So you take the lot area by 12,000 square feet divided by 800. That tells you the number of units I'm allowed. If I want more than that, I need a variance. If I had zoned this multifamily large, but that wouldn't allow the ground floor commercial, it'd still be a 4-story building. I wouldn't need that variance. If I want a mixed use building, which we're trying to encourage, the highest density I can get is multifamily medium.
So you can ask for, you got X number of square feet in 4 floors or 3 floors.
Yes.
Which actually allows you to have not all 400 square foot units. You can have more because you got, it's not based on the building, it's based on the land. Okay?
Based on the number of dwelling units, based on the lot area,
The lot, yeah.
divided by what's allowed in the zoning bylaw. It's a simple calculation.
Yeah.
Most lots in Winnipeg only allow multifamily medium. I call it, again, the mushy middle. There is no zoning category that allows, I'd say like a Polo Park, if I want high density and high commercial. There's no category for that. So you either do medium density and some commercial, or you do no commercial in the building and you go high density. We're looking to get a variance so we can have a mixture of density and commercial.
Okay, so I think I'm with you now, because it's based on it's a size of the lot.
Size of the lot.
Size of the.
Divided by the zoning district. It's not based on building height.
Right, okay, so
Be based on.
sprinting to the finish line here then, hopefully, you were at 525.
Variance is previously
But
approved.
45, sorry, that's on me, lot area per dwelling unit, so that was 22 units?
Yeah, so that would have been, so that would have been 1260. Yeah, so they had less units back then. So we've increased the number of units by making some of them smaller and making some of them larger.
I mean, you could have the same building precisely with fewer units. You could have 4 units, you could have 1 per floor, I suppose.
Yeah, if you can
To run this to an illogical.
charge $2 million per unit, and there's a building like that in Toronto where it's like 15 stories and each there's a unit per floor, and they sell for like $5 million.
But I mean, the underlying zoning here is 800 units per.
If you'd like me to clarify that, I could.
I would like that, Mr. Chair, if.
Yeah, and I'll try to speak up this time. I just want to stress that the coordinate plan supports the density that's being applied for today. The only reason there's a density variance at all is because the portion of the property that's in the medium density residential area, that's the internal part of the property, has a cap of 800. But the coordinate plan says that if you're in that policy area and you, through the rezoning process, you can seek a higher density, and that lines up with the coordinate plan. So we can support variances for higher density. And to add to that, the other policy area is the low-rise mixed use, which has no density cap at all. So it's the coordinate plan supports the density as proposed. We look at everything together. Public service does make sure there's enough parking though, because you can't have just unlimited density without parking. So we are recommending a condition of approval for a car share vehicle. Because with that vehicle, it would work out to a supportable ratio of stalls on site functionally. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out. That's why the public service supports the density.
If I may, Mr. It's within is it within this may be a clerk's question, is it within our jurisdiction to say, we liked it we liked it the way it was, 545 square feet, you do the math, that's 22 or 23 there, that's better on parking. That, or are we simply limited to you're either 400 or 800? You either get the variance or you don't.
It could be between based on not more than applied for, it could be between 400 and 800.
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
I would though defer to the planner just in case there are other considerations if that were to occur.
We don't generally recommend making changes to density on the fly in the hearing because we don't know how that can impact the development. A lot of times it could kill projects. I know that
Then why have these hearings?
Pardon?
Well, then why have these sham hearings?
Well, either you approve it or you don't approve it.
Well, that's.
you can choose something,
but you're doing your job. We can, you recommend against it, I guess, for some.
I would say as the chairperson, I've been around for a little bit longer than you, probably I know more than you, Councillor Means, but I've seen other councillors make changes on the fly and they're ridiculous. They told me it's not a good practice. If you support the appeal, you support the appeal. If you don't, right?
Well,
that's kind of what we do as an appeal committee.
Well, with all due respect, there's multiple variances here with multiple subheadings, so we could pick out, we just did that on the last one, as a matter of fact, so. Yeah, I'm just trying to get clarity. Well, John, maybe.
Change it, we did that.
So I have a question for Mr. Winthrop here. So you were at 22 units, 545, and you've added a little bit of height on one end and you've tinkered around with balconies and stuff, but.
Move the building over.
Why the greater density then? I mean, you would
There's
have
demand
like
for
20.
housing, so, besides the demand for housing, we put in more, I'll call it attainable. A lot of people mix affordable, and I'll say more attainable. It's not affordable in terms of designated affordable housing. It's more attainable, 400 square foot studios, 515 square foot one bedrooms. That's more attainable for people. Well, I'll say house prices are going up. They're pretty high.
800 for a studio?
Yeah, I think the rental is going to be like, I have a 900 square foot one bedroom in Osborne Village, and thankfully I almost got my mortgage paid off, but you know, I've been told I can rent it out for like $2,000. It's like, those things used to rent for like $800 like 10 years ago. Right? Like, so, you know, being to rent a 900 square foot unit in Osborne Village, well, now you got to get like smaller, like 400 square feet to make the economics work for a tenant.
Okay. I think this has been a good discussion, or at least you've clarified some of my questions and some good points raised by Mr. Umber. I sit here and I just marvel at you. We got to build these smaller units. Also, we need to be able to build bigger, you know, we need more height. We need more lot coverage when we're doing infill housing because we need to be bigger. It's like, we need to be smaller. But we also need to be bigger. Like, somebody choose a lane here. I mean, it's just incredibly frustrating to sit here and get this from the planning department, I have to say. So
I'll agree with the idea that if you want, like if you want density, you either, and the architects will tell you this, you either, you know, go up vertically or you push it down and flatten it out. It's like a building envelope is like a balloon. You either squash it down and pancake it out and spread it out more, or you go up more. So you can't have both. You can't have, okay, we're going to push the buildings down and then we're going to chop the sides off it and then somehow make more units into that work. At the end of the day, the tenant has to be, or the person, the occupier has to be able to afford it. And those 10,000, that 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom unit, like those things, that rents out in Sage Creek for like just under $3,000. Like the amount that people are paying for rent now is just, it's like very high out there. I know a lot of people, I know a developer who's renting something like that down in Sage Creek.
well,
It's expensive.
getting
So that's why you've got to add more units to be able to
my
make it
point is,
attainable.
you
So
gotta-
you either go up.
let us build more. People want smaller spaces to live in, so we got to do this. Also, we got to build. We also got to move from 28 feet to 30 feet tall on the infill guidelines and allow more units because people want more space. You know, what the hell? Like, this is just completely contradictory. So
Yeah, because they're pushing.
not for today. All right. So those are my questions.
There's some questions we need answers to.
No, there are questions, but but we're not going to get them today. I think
I'm at a 4-story building.
more philosophical perhaps than on point. So thank you for the presentation, and that's helpful.
So, do you have any questions, Councilor Kim?
I'm good.
No?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, I have some questions that we need answers to.
Sure.
The planner presented, not having an opaque fence along this is right at the corner of Stafford, right? So, no opaque fence, that's a condition, so that the sight lines are good. There'll be high school students around and stuff like that.
They want an opaque fence along Stafford?
No.
No, like it would be
No.
against my east neighbor, right?
I can't remember.
There's screening for the garbage can at the back of the building and landscaping, and we're doing earth bin, and I think there's a short fence at the back of the building, running to the back lane to screen the garbage cans a little bit more.
Can you mention the condition again?
Sure, there's a opaque fence right now, very close to Stafford, within about 12 feet of Stafford. And there's some evergreen trees. So we're recommending that just the fence be transparent, and that if trees are there, they're not coniferous but deciduous, so there's better sight lines. I can read the wording as well. This is just for community
So I'd like you to
consideration.
say, are you okay with it or not?
Yeah, I no problem with the fencing like that.
Good catch, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have another specific question. we heard, so you have an 11-foot side yard to, what is it, 909? So that's the east side, those balconies, how far will they go out into that 11-foot side yard?
Well, first, I don't need any variances for
I know
balconies.
you don't, but there, you want, I'd like to hear.
Sure, let me take a look here. I believe the balconies extend, they're very small. They're, looking at the site plan I have on the screen, are only like 7 feet long. And they extend, it looks like, less than 4 feet into the side yard.
Okay. And on the west side, that's.
The balconies are bigger. So the building articulates out, so the ground floor is closer to Stafford, and almost the balconies are on top of the commercial. A new building in Osborne Village just went up very similar like that.
I think that's all the specific questions on that. Oh, so you're saying there are direct routes going down Stafford, right? We heard from somebody saying they're speculating that the bus service won't be as good, but you said it's a 2-minute walk to Corydon?
Yeah, I take the bus out here all the time. I get off at the Starbucks. Currently, it's great. I know we're changing that. I look across Winnipeg, and this is probably one of the most transit-rich areas that are going to be available. You're going to have a direct line along Corydon. The former 18 is going to be the 19. I take that bus all the time. I take a bus down Stafford almost once a day. Those two buses. That's going to be a direct line.
Bus is going down Stafford too, and that's a frequent bus, not a direct bus.
Yes, a direct line along Stafford.
The McGregor bus is a frequent.
Yeah, and it's going to go down Stafford. Then the D19 is the old 18 Corydon. And then there's another one, the D16, that is going to go, it swings over and goes on from Academy. Right now, it keeps on Academy. It goes all the way up to Pullet Park. This is going to swing up on the Grosvenor. So this is one of the most transit-rich locations I've seen for this new map.
Okay, great. So that's it. No more questions. Thank you for your presentation.
I just wanted to raise one point. It had to do with the condition of the car co-op share vehicle.
Oh.
My only concern about that is you're requiring me to have like an agreement with a third party before my variances can become effective. That third party says they don't want to participate, then I don't get my variances.
Have you inquired with Pixit?
I believe the owners are. I don't do that. But I'm always concerned about having a third party who's not the city or not the applicant somehow participating and squash this.
I'll submit to you that you're getting pretty good parking variance, so I would suggest to you that that's basically how we do it from the city perspective. But thanks for making the point.
Yeah.
They can actually establish their own if they can't get Peg City to do it.
Yeah, I'd like that. We'd be happy with that. They'd have their own vehicle.
Either way. You don't have to.
I'd be fine with that. I just don't want a third party being able to squash this variance because they don't want to participate in it.
Saying that if Peg City doesn't want to work with you, your owner, then the owner can establish their own shared vehicle.
Okay, if that's the condition then we have no problem with it.
You have to have a proof that it's going to be put in place.
Okay, then we're fine with that then.
All right.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in opposition to the appeal? And anyone here to speak for information on the appeal? Seeing none, we can go to questions for the administration.
Questions, colleagues?
I'm wondering, I had a question about I'm confused on drive aisle width, but perhaps Mr. Ross can just discuss that with me after, because it's not dead material for this. It's relatively minor variance here, but as I read the bylaw, there's two different standards, 16 feet.
Yeah, like a drive aisle, two-way has to be 20 feet, a driveway, 16 feet, 8 feet each. But there's a drive aisle when you're going between vehicles, parked vehicles. The drive aisle, so it needs 20 feet for two-way.
But the driveway is 16.
That's correct. Well, it's 8 feet for a driveway. If you were to have a double, it would be 16
If two-way traffic.
for a driveway.
Well, fascinating as you and I find this, I should probably move on. I don't, maybe Council Chambers has questions.
Yep, Council Jim,
No, good.
good, and you don't have any more of the administration?
If I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
just for clarity then, so on the issue on the density, it's the floor, it's the size of the lot that determines the.
Yeah, how many
The
units on that
calculation.
size of lot? Exactly.
So you could have, all of these are over 400, but the average size is 400 because you're going vertically, basically.
The average density across the whole site is 400 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit. Which, as I mentioned before, the Corridon plan supports by way of variance because it's a corner lot.
And you're comfortable with it's a fair comment. I mean, we've had a lot of these over the years of, we got 5,000 square feet, we're gonna put 4 units in there, right? In fact, if you did the LeMay Forest, that sort of math ran all the way out to whatever it was, 400 or 500. This is a lot more than 4 units on 5,000. This is 30 units on 12,000. Is that just contextual because of where we are?
The density still works out to 400. It's just the ratio of dwelling units per lot area. So it works out to 400 across the whole site. So we are only comfortable with that. A car share is provided because the parking, but we're okay with it because the Corridon plan supports it, the density.
And he has no room to put in additional parking spaces then, based on the buffer zone, et cetera? Okay, thank you.
I'll have to ask the administration, I forgot to ask the applicant, but you have a visual of the existing lot and you know where the earth bins are gonna be?
Yes, they'll be at the northwest corner of the lot off the lane, and they'll be screened by that fence.
Okay, so I'm aware of a development that they just discovered, where 3 floors up, 7 in total. They discovered that their earth bins or whatever they call them are unable to be established because there's a hydro line that will affect the ability to lift those bins out.
That'd be handled at the permit stage through water and through solid waste, and an alternative would have to be determined at that time.
All right, so technically, we hear that they have the earth bins, but that may not be established, right? Depending on where the hydro line is and so on. Right? So that's a permit.
It doesn't look like they would be in the way at this point. There doesn't seem to be a pole in that location.
Good. Colleagues, I'm gonna 5-minute break. I'm just going to do, I'm not going to do the other thing for this.
Okay.
We're gonna break for 5 minutes and then we'll hear from the rebuttal from the.
Good call. Nothing to do with this hearing. But
Okay.
Call the appeal committee back to order, and the next order of business is to hear from our appellants in order to rebut, but not to add new information.
Correct. So I will call forward our first appellant, Kenton Larson. And again, you'll have up to 10 minutes to speak into rebuttal to comments made. However, no new information is permitted.
Thank you. Thanks again. I just wanted to say, I think this might be, in terms of coming to talk here, in terms of watching and participating, this might, I don't know how many hearings it's been, 6 or 7 or something like that, but they start to blur in the mind at a certain point. But also, and I'm sure, and I appreciate that, you hear them every day. But I want to say there's just some things that always come up that I just want to point to, like, what are the businesses going to be? Well, it could be anything. That's what we just heard. It could be anything. And I just want to say that's not reassuring. Like, it's concerning, actually, unfortunately, because anything, the mind goes to the worst thing that you can imagine going there. And I think by virtue of where that property is, I actually think that the answer to what's going to go there, I think that's really, really important. And my concern is that that it's going to be something that's going to be that's going to make something that's already extremely big in the property. It's going to make it more questionable and more dangerous. I also wanted to say that if we're worried about homes for people, the developer removed 3 single-family homes from the property, and the place has been sitting empty for 5 years. Like, that was an opportunity. Those were being rented out, and those were 3 homes taken off the property for the last 5 years. I will reiterate what you've already heard about community consultation, which is it was lacking. And it was, it's just hard to, like, the person doing it could not answer the simplest questions about the development. And the community's concerns, they were really brushed off, I have to say. They were brushed off. And at a prior, at our community center meeting, it came out that there was nothing that the community said that was taken into consideration. So I want to point that out as well. I also want to say neighborhood opposition to this is larger than what you see here today. And I know, like, this has been 5 years, and you can appreciate that people's willingness to take time off work and to come here. And I appreciate, it is imposing to come here, all of those things. But I want it to be noted that there's many more people watching today who are also in opposition to this from the community. In fact, I don't know anybody who's in support of it in the community. I want to point out that having a walkable neighborhood, that a bus in the vicinity, and that bike storage don't strike me as being like a sustainability plan. Like, I've heard so much about bike storage, and to me, it's just a cage where you park some bikes. Like, it's not like how many people are gonna legitimately, in a city where winter is half the year. I just don't buy into that being anything. Like, I have a shed with a bike, but I have a shed with a bike, but I'm not a hero. Like, I just put my bike in the shed, and someday, once in a while, I ride that bike. I just don't think. I also think, like, over time, we've heard that people will work and live in the building. I don't see that as being necessary. Since we don't know what the business is going to be, it's very hard to buy into that. I also want to just say, like, once again, I think what these developments do, this is sort of, it's hard to iterate this, but I think these buildings, they almost build a sense of forgetfulness into the neighborhood. So nobody remembers what it used to look like. And then with each subsequent hearing, we hear, well, there's that, like, the first one gets approved. Then the next one comes and goes, well, there's that one. So I'm going to build one. And the next person, I'm going to build one, until really it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you go, like, oh yeah, that one exists, so I should be able to build mine. Once again, I'm just going to say, I still think the biggest problem here, I do think it presents safety issues. The parking in particular presents safety issues. And I appreciate counselor's discussion about like the structure versus the number of units in the structure. I think that's a good discussion. I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for your rebuttal, and
thank you.
I still remember the neighborhood how it looked when sure doesn't look like that anymore.
Yeah, quite different.
Yeah. Well, I will ask you this question.
Yes.
So somebody who owned those houses sold the property. They do have a choice as to who they sell the property to.
Yeah, they do. They do. And there's a, just like everything with this property, there's a story behind that one too. And I'll say, there's, the gentleman who's, not the gentleman who presently owns the property next door, but the gentleman who sold that property on the first go around, once this was approved the first time, he made an attempt, to buy one of those homes, and it didn't work out, unfortunately, clearing the way then for the developer to do so. And I think it's safe to say that if any of us were given the opportunity to buy those homes today, I think if I would have known about it, I would have been interested in that as well. But I guess it was, some of these things happen without a sign going up, for instance. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the thoughtful questions.
Okay, so our next appellant, Caroline Traeger.
I think I just want to mention that the presentation that Mr. Winthrop gave, it's very clinical. Yes, there's these bus lines coming in, but maybe what you don't realize is because we no longer go through the downtown, these bus lines don't take you to where most of the people in our area are going to. So my options now are the 68, which was going down Grosvenor, now comes down Academy, Stafford, then up Grosvenor. I have to go all the way around St. Boniface to get to my location, which is on the other side of downtown. My other option is I transit. I transit onto a different bus, or the 18, which no longer goes. I forget what the number is going to be on that one. It no longer goes downtown. My option is to go to the downtown Y and walk 25 minutes to get to my location. So I don't think these bus lines are going to be anything that people are going to be going, yeah, I'm going to jump on the bus. Most people will be taking their cars, because why would you add 20 to 40 minutes more onto your day? So I know that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
The other thing too is the house beside this development, it actually isn't a single family home. There's 2 suites inside this house. A lot of the other developments that were pointed out, like across the street and that, those are 4 units compared to what we're getting already on a very high density street. Plus, if you go to the other side of Stafford, they do not have the same amount of traffic that we have, because everybody's trying to get to downtown. They're not trying to go the other way. So you can't compare what's happening on that side to what's happening on our side, because the congestion is bad. I wish that the developer would have worked with us. I think he would have found us to be very agreeable and wanting to develop there. But the choice was made not to talk to us and not to take our advice. As you had asked about the 3 houses, we didn't know those were being sold. Originally, they were 2 of the houses on the one closest to Stafford and the one closest to the yellow house were purchased by Walter. He sold them to Dwell Design, and then they made the offer on the middle house, which is what our neighbor tried to buy. Unfortunately, he went away on vacation, and the developer provided more money, and that was it. So we didn't even know these things were going up for sale. I just hope that people can also take into consideration that just because a property's there doesn't mean you just build out as big as you can, and because the variances allow you. We're human beings. I mean, we should be given the opportunity to enjoy our lives also. So thank you.
So just before you leave, I recall in the developer's presentation, they said they did community consultation even though it wasn't required.
Yeah, they did, but they only handed it out on McMillan. They never gave it to any of the neighbors on Dorchester. And then when we called in with our concerns, they couldn't answer any of our questions. actually,
You couldn't answer any questions.
sorry?
How do you mean couldn't answer?
Well, we asked him how high the building was gonna be, and she wasn't quite sure, and we asked him about why is why all of a sudden have we gone to 4 feet? We asked about the sight lines, and she just she didn't have enough knowledge or to be prepared for the questions we were asking. So it was a free Zoom meeting, so it got cut off.
Oh.
And so we were left not being able to get our questions answered. And there were 2 of them that day. We went to both of them, and the architect, nobody was there but a person that works for Mr. Winthrop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next appellant is Bob Sider.
Yes, my biggest concern, is there's 2. The height, because I'm right across the lane, there's gonna just be this massive thing and no privacy. And the other thing is the number of units in this place, the size of the units. Like, I know we need to build a lot of spaces for people to live. There's a problem with housing, that kind of thing. But when you build, the smaller you get, it's going to attract a certain type of people that the relationship will be a lot of transient people in and out, less pride in where they live. The bigger the place, the more pride. They'll take care of the place, less violence, all of that kind of stuff. So I'm concerned with what type of people will be attracted to our neighborhood in terms of wanting to stay where they are and make it their home that they are proud of and their surroundings that they are proud of. I don't want it to attract people who are just on the way through and don't give a whatever to where they live, and it's just a temporary location. That is my concern.
Okay. Thank you for the McLuhan reference earlier. I don't think we've ever had that here before, so thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and our final appellant to speak in rebuttal is Barry Ottenbright.
Thank you again for the opportunity. I wanted to speak about specifically about the building design that is part of this application. It was mentioned, there was a lot of discussion about the 11-foot east side yard setback and how that exceeded the minimum setback. One of the things that changed from the 2020 design to I'll call it the 2024 design, is that we went from 22 units to 30 units, and the orientation of the units themselves in the 2020 design was orientated towards McMillan Avenue, Stafford, and the rear lane. What we have in the 2024 design is 12 units facing east into that 11-foot setback with 3-foot balconies, 8 feet away from the neighboring house. In my previous presentation a couple months ago, I mentioned that this was a privacy concern because you now have 11 units looking directly into somebody's private residence. I don't know how comfortable you would feel with 11 units, people sitting on their balcony looking into your backyard, but it is a concern. When I referenced those 16 different multifamily developments in the development area, and the 8 new ones all face the major streets. All the units are orientated towards Grosvenor or Stafford or the adjacent streets. none of them are directly looking into the neighboring properties. So that's a concern. Again, the primary issue for myself as a resident in the neighborhood is the density. It's uncharacteristic of the rest of the neighborhood. You know, we've you talked about the investment of the developer in the property, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've lived there for 32 years. I've invested in that property, in my property every year for the last 32 years. And so have other people. This neighborhood has improved over the last 30 years. I can tell you that. Very proud of the neighborhood. And I think that has to be recognized as well.
No questions?
No. Okay, thank you, sir. I think after yours, we're moving into consideration of motion.
Correct.
Thank you. Wally, yeah.
I can go or you can go. I did the last one, see me when you can.
I move that the report of the Winnipeg Public Service be taken as read.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, nobody's opposed, carried.
I move that the receipt of the public representations be concluded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed, that's carried.
I move that in accordance with subsection 247(3) of the City of Winnipeg Charter, the variance is consistent with Plan Winnipeg and any applicable secondary plan. Does not create a substantial adverse effect on the amenities, use, safety, and convenience of the adjoining properties in the adjacent area, including in an area separated by the property by a street or waterway. Is a minimum modification of the zoning bylaw required to relieve the injurious effect of the zoning bylaw on the applicant's property and is compatible with the area in which the property is to be affected or situated. In terms of supporting comments, I'm going back to the public services recommendations and concurring with that.
Councilor Mees, you got a comment?
I suppose I could agree with that and then try to move one amendment. Mr. Clerk? I mean,
So,
You have to.
yeah, you'll have to vote on what's before, the motion that's been put forward.
yeah. I had simply from Mr. Audenbright's point at 1D, sorry, that's on me, that 1E, the lot area per dwelling unit, I do think that's a pretty big jump up from, we were at 20 something and now we're at 30 units.
From 22.
I did think that was, and that.
Your options about
I'm basically trying to get clarity from the clerk.
So it would be Councilor Chambers would move motions and we would vote on them. If there was a friendly amendment to be made, that would be an option, but.
Yeah, I'm not, but is that under this, I mean, we just went through that bizarre exercise in the last one where we said it's all compatible, but, and then the amendments came in the next.
Exactly, the amendments would come in the next motion.
So I could speak to that, we can move this along by, if we're gonna argue, well, let's argue into the next heading, not this one, I suppose. Cause I do think, I had some sympathy for that, trying to balance the interests here. That knocks off some of the parking concern as well, I think, if you do that, so.
Anyway, I think that's unfriendly because the motion here is we're supporting. The
Public. Completely agree with you, yeah.
The public service has said that actually the density meets the Accord in Osborne Village plan development area, whatever it's called, plan area. So I would be totally unfriendly trying to change it.
But on this one, this is simply the charter portion and then the supporting reason.
Let's move my attempt in the next business then, yeah.
Okay. So that's on you now, Chair, if you have. any
Okay, I'm gonna
comments or
speak to this. We heard from the public service that this meets, took years to come up with the area plan there that we're talking about. Years. Sir Jenny Trabowski worked quite extensively to try to get one put in place. It was eventually put in place. It might have been amended once, but I'm going to be voting. The appeal is essentially what's happening because it's meeting. This is unlike like the previous patterns. I'll be voting yes. So calling the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed, that is carried.
That the appeal be denied and the decision of the Director of Planning, Property and Development be not concurred in?
Be concurred in. I do have one question. There was the suggestion from the planner regarding the new condition of opaque fencing.
Right, yes.
Is that something that
We can add.
the committee would like to add?
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, it would be concurred in with
With the
that amendment.
recommendation, yeah. Amendment.
And okay, this is where I would, I mean, I don't know, Council Chambers, how you feel on this, but I would not, I don't support variance 1E.
Yeah. Okay. So you want it removed?
Yeah,
Or you make it
Mr.
an
Clerk, am I moving that as an amendment? I suppose I am.
So you want to have it back to 800?
800.
800
I'd be fine with where he was
That
before at
doesn't allow for
545.
22. If you want to go back to the 22, you can't do that either.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
okay, I know I can't. I can do math. So I'm happy with where he was before, the 545 square feet. And the clerk had indicated, yeah, you got to be in between 400 and 800. So that gets you 20 some odd units. So fine, that would be the amendment. But yes, you're right. If it's 800, yeah, it's 15 units probably.
Yeah. So you're coming with the 500 and how much? Square feet?
Mr. Ross, where was he before? 545 square feet per unit.
What was the question?
Under the 2021 plan, the applicant was not at 400 square feet per dwelling unit. He was at 540 something.
I don't have that in front of me, but I can figure out the density of that would allow for a certain number of units you're asking me to figure out if you like.
Well, it's not that hard. 12,000 and it's five. If they put 500 into 12,000, it's 24 units. So I think that would give him a couple more than what he had before. So I'll move 500, which is above and beyond what he had under the previous. So it'd shave it down from 30 units to 24.
The last proposal was for 22 units, is that correct?
Yeah.
So that would be a 548 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit.
All right, for ease of, that's fine. I'll move that as amendment that.
So sorry, what was that final number for the lot?
548.
545, so that would be to amend 548, okay, 548. That would be to amend 1E for a lot area dwelling of 548. And Councillor Chambers, are you moving that as part? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
got all the wording. Okay, so you moved that?
Yeah.
So really you're upholding the appeal to the park, right?
Yeah.
All right, okay. Let me just call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Please mark me as opposed. Mr. Harris, thank you.
Noted.
Okay, I move that variance order DAV 271912/2024 C be canceled.
All those in favor?
And I move that the public,
Opposed.
okay, I move that the public hearing with respect to the appeal be concluded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed to that one.
Not bad.
Please note that the committee has made a final decision on this matter, which is not subject to further appeal.
And I call for adjournment.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, we're off rotation then, are we, Mr. Harris?
Correct.
Are we?
Yes.
Public Works and Finance.
Oh, fine.